Constellation, Last Stand Media's conversational podcast, is brought to you by you. If you want to learn how to support our podcast network, head to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Constellation, Last Stand Media's conversational podcast. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined today by a very special group indeed. Special like on the short bus? Or special like you want, you want to spend time with them and they really mean a lot to you? Maybe a little bit of both. Appreciate you guys being here today. Everyone listening, watching, and of course being here on the panel. This is our conversational podcast, and thus let's announce the panel here. Very exciting group of people. Have we all been together like this yet? The four of us? I don't know. No.
First time, yeah.
Lord Cognito, good to see you, my friend.
Good to see
you.
How's life? Doing good. Just telling the boys, I was like, man, it feels good not to be traveling. Like at least to be in my own bed for about 2 months, which is going to be, I'm excited. Good to see Brad in person again. Got a chance to chat with him a little bit in LA, so that was good. I got my hug, so I was happy. And then, man, Locke, like I said, it's too much, man. It's almost twice in 2 months. What's going on?
Too much.
That's a lot of Europe.
It's a lot of Europe right there. Salute the live, man. You're killing it, brother. Good to see you. And of course, Colin, it's been a minute. So salute.
Yeah, man. It's good to see you. So yeah, how was what was the vibe at E3 Light?
It's different. you know the era we come from, which is the extravaganza. It is changed. It's like the equivalent of like 2 street blocks sectioned off. The couple of stuff you can access. But I will say this: it's better than probably what the PAX East and those type of things are offering. So definitely Jeff has more control of a lot of where the games are going to be shown at and stuff like that. But it's different. It's never going to be what it was. We're from that era. We're from that golden era where it was the extravaganza, the 2 convention halls, East and West, and then the showcases and stuff like that. So I didn't mind the award show. That was fun. But overall, cool. Got a chance to meet people I haven't seen in a long time. So that was fun.
Cool, man. Yeah, I'm glad you had fun. It looked interesting from the outside. You're right. It's a totally different vibe than back in the day. And there's been multiple E3 vibes. Like my first E3 in 2004 was like when it was still very closed off, but it was huge. But like you really couldn't get in unless you had. And I was an intern at IGN at that time, and that's how I got in. But then I remember, were you around, Cog? Probably not yet. The Santa Monica year where it was all fucked up.
I'm jealous of that. You got stories, yeah.
Yeah, that was like it was that like airplane hangar, like hangars at an airport. It was very weird. You weren't around for that either, Brad? I don't think.
No. I missed that.
And then it went back to being normal again for a while, which was cool. A lot of fun E3 memories. But yeah, it seems like all of the shows are kind of not as important anymore. Like nothing.
It's just different.
Well, it's good to see you, my friend. That's a nice shirt. It does. What's that? As Dusk Falls? That's an Xbox game, right? Or is that?
Yeah, it's on PlayStation now.
It's on PlayStation.
Yeah, it's on PS5. Yeah, they had about like a year exclusivity, I think.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Yeah. I got my Sunset Overdrive sweatshirt.
Ooh, okay, Insomniac. Let's go.
Yeah. With the Microsoft Studios logo on the.
Okay, I see what we're doing.
Well, Cog, thanks for being here. Brad Ellis from Orange County, California. How are you today, my friend? Good to see you.
I'm good. Very specific location. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm doing good. It's starting to heat up a little around here. I'm not too amped about that, but it's probably nowhere compared to where you are, Colin.
Oh my God.
But
yeah.
It looks like you're chilling in AC right now if you got a sweatshirt on.
Oh yeah, I have it at 68 to 72 depending on where you are in the house at all times. So, but I must admit, I woke up randomly at 11, which is pretty early for me actually. So I went to bed at like 4 or 4:30 or something. And I'm like, I really need to mow the lawn because my mom's retired. My mom retired and we're having a party for her. I said this on Sacred Symbols at the Jefferson in Richmond, which is like a nice hotel. And then we're going to come back here afterwards so everyone can swim and shit because it's going to be so hot. And so I needed to mow the lawn. And I'm like, I got to just get out there and do it. And it was like 85 at the time. Ooh. And I was like, I'm like, I can bear that because what is it now? Yeah, it'll be 93 today. 93, these are the highs for the next week. 93, 97, 95, 93, 93, 96. Good times. And Cog, I think up in Jersey City, I was going to say I think it's even worse. It's actually even worse.
Oh, disgusting.
Because my dad was saying that on the island too, that it's even like the heat wave's even worse up there, which sucks.
Jeez.
Brutal.
God. Yep. You have AC, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, AC's on. 100%. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It is brutal right now.
Do you have window units or do you have central
We
air?
got the old school window unit, the BTU 16,000.
Yeah, that's how I grew up.
BTU with the bricks and the to keep the balance. Yeah.
My dad was so annoying when I was a kid because I think he didn't seem to care about the power bill as much as just using older stuff and like not having to pay for new things. So my dad used to bring home stuff from New York City all the time, like and fires like that. Like for people that don't know, my dad's a retired fireman in New York City, and so he'd bring home like banisters and fucking beautiful pieces of wood and like ornate things. And he brought home these air conditioners, these from like the 70s, and then that's what we had to use. They were literally from the 70s, and they were so cold. Like there was no thermometer on it to see like, oh, we shut on and off. It's just like it's either on or off, and this thing would fucking make your room into an ice box. I would wake up in the middle of the night sometimes and be like, it is so, dude, it's got to be 40 degrees in my room, you know. And it was also insanely loud. So like if you were trying to watch the TV or something, you couldn't do anything but have the air conditioner on in the room. And I'll never forget that. And central air is so much more convenient, but the building has to be built with it in mind, or it's not going to work. You know,
Absolutely.
And by the way, we had central air on Long Island. My dad just refused to connect the air conditioner to the outside, so we had all the ducts and stuff. That was even the worst part. What an asshole!
Dad
He's a good man. I love my dad. It's funny to bust his balls. Well, Brad, good to see you. Okay, and then finally, Lockmort. I don't know if you're trying to create some sort of like servitude toward like where I'm going to owe you so much money at some point that I'm not going to be able to pay you back or something.
That's the goal. Yeah.
Feel free to. You're going to hit me one day and you'll be like, the invoice is $28,000, and I'm going to be like, all right, I guess if that's what.
I saw you
That's what
mention
you
this.
say because just don't ask to be paid. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Well, you've mentioned this before, and every time you do, people tag me like, you got to invoice Colin. But we already talked about this a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if you remember this, but I think we were on Summon Sign together at some point a couple of weeks ago. And we discussed this back then too. And I was going to invoice you after Dustin gets back, right? So I invoice
That's
you.
right,
So I invoice you once a year because that's easier for you.
No, it's great. I mean, I pay. There are a couple people I pay once a year actually. Which is good, but it's easy. See, I have to either make fun of you about that or Europe, and I really feel like I've been going at Europe too hard recently.
That's true.
And I don't want to alienate the European audience. So, welcome to the show. Good to see you. How's life?
Thank you. Good. Yeah, you can make fun of me being poor. That's a good one. No, I'm doing great. We don't have summer here anymore, which is awesome because I hate the heat. So it's raining here constantly. It's always like 15 degrees Celsius. I don't know what that is your weird metric or what do you use? Fahrenheit?
Let me look here.
Like minus
Celsius
1,000 or
to Fahrenheit conversion. What is it? 15?
Yeah, 15 degrees Celsius.
That's 59 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
Ooh,
I guess
nice.
that's cold for
That
you
sounds
guys.
perfect.
that sounds nice.
Yeah, exactly. For me, that's perfect. So I specifically chose this apartment to live in because this is one of the few apartments in the whole country that has AC because I really can't stand the heat. So when I moved in here, I figured, well, summers got nothing on me anymore. But now we don't get summers anymore, of course. So it's kind of useless. But it's it's been great. I can go outside. I can smile. I have fun. I don't die of a heat stroke. So no, I'm doing awesome. Thank you, sir.
Dude, I have I was so hot and I was like, I'm sweating profusely all the time now. Like ever since I started taking Lexapro a few years ago, I just sweat when I go outside or whatever, when it's hot. Jumped in the pool after I mowed the lawn though. And that was a nice thing. So the pool's nice, but here's the thing about the pool. It's basically ambient at this point. It's so hot outside that you're basically just in water that is the exact temperature of what it is outside. And I don't even have the heater on or anything like that.
Oh, God.
But it was nice to kind of cool down a little bit, because I had to get out there and mow, make this place presentable.
Of course.
Yeah. God, it's hot.
Are you still getting dead animals in there?
No, we got the frog log, which is a real, so it's a pretty cool idea. Here's what happens. Frogs specifically, other animals get in your pool and shit too, but frogs love your pool. And they can chill in the chlorine. It's not really a huge deal, but they don't know how to get out. And so they end up in your skimmer and then they swirl around and then eventually drown, right? If they don't have the strength to like stay up anymore.
Damn.
So you get this thing called the frog log, which is just, and it's a great idea. It's a trademark and everything. Like it's just this little piece of floating plastic that sits on the edge next to the skimmer and with a little path that goes out of the pool, and they just walk up the path and they can get out of the pool, and it stops them from dying. It's a very simple solution.
Oh,
Yeah.
Cool.
Because I don't want to. I have 2 Japanese beetle traps in my yard right now. Japanese beetles are horrifying, and they're basically like they have these like smells that attract them, their pheromones, and then they have sex over the. This is literally what happens. They have sex over the bag and fall into the bag. So it's like these like sex traps, and they're full of like a million of these things right now. Those are the only animals I'm trying to kill right now. You know?
Right now.
And I have probably 1,000 bodies at this point of beetles in these bags. So it's working great. Sometimes I go over there, like, because they just fly around and then they sit and they smell it and they're around it. And then I just boop, tap them right into the bag. Very satisfying. And for some reason, they have no idea how to get out of the bag.
That's hilarious.
It's basically like, it's not good as far as animal rights and all the rest, but they got to go. They're not indigenous to this place. Hence the name Japanese beetle. So,
well,
does
PETA care about insects?
Good question.
I don't know, and I don't give a shit. If PETA cares about something, I automatically don't care about it. You know?
Let's see.
You know that billboard where it's like it has a sequence of animals? I don't know if you guys have ever seen this. It's like, rabbits and deer and horses and cows. And then it's like, where do you draw the line? Or whatever. And then people started tweeting it out and literally drawing the line of where they draw the line between the animals they care about and they don't. Yeah, which I thought was like the funniest thing ever. Those motherfuckers are so annoying. They're like the people in Europe, the oil people in Europe that grow paint on everything. Dude, if I saw someone do what they did to Stonehenge.
That's disgusting.
That shit doesn't happen in the United States really for a major reason, which is someone would get killed.
Yeah, you have guns. Yeah, we don't have guns.
Like if someone went to like some like monument. Not that we have things that, I mean, that's the thing is that's so old. Have some respect.
Yeah, exactly.
It
also doesn't help their cause because I don't know anyone who gets converted by them doing that. Like it just gets annoying for people. They just hate them more now.
I wouldn't be surprised 1 iota if BP, ExxonMobil, and these other companies were 4D chess funding those things.
Yeah, I've heard people say that.
Yeah, because it is so weird. It's the same thing with the Palestine protesters like blocking traffic. I'm like, if I were an Israeli PAC or something, I would fucking do that all day. I would give you millions of dollars and fuck everything up and blame it on you. Psyops. All right, my friends.
PETA does care about insects.
Do they?
Yeah.
Let me ask you guys this hypothetical question. How do you feel do you guys know anything about the fact that like we know how to kill mosquitoes permanently? Have you heard about this? But like we don't know if we should do it or not.
Yeah, I've heard.
So like we can basically like genetically, I guess, breed these certain things that make them like not able to have like babies anymore or something, these certain lines. And so we know we could eliminate and make certain mosquito lines extinct, which is a very important, not for the annoyance of mosquitoes, but for malaria and all that kind of shit. Yeah. And they're like, we don't know if we should do it or not.
Because you're disrupting the
right.
potential.
And I'm like, it feels dangerous, like, but do it anyway. Let's see what happens. Fuck it. Do it.
Fuck it, dude.
It's like the people that want to pound out messages to the stars and let everyone know we're here. And then there are people that are like, no, you cannot do that. Like, it's like, just do it. See what happens. We won't be around. It won't be and I would love to go in an alien invasion. Like if I was going to die, that would be a pretty radical way to die. In an alien invasion.
Alien invasion. You want Independence Day?
Yeah. I want to live a little bit to understand more before I die. I don't want to be like the guy on the, like celebrating on the building in New York City and they just get lit up. Like,
no,
right
you
away.
gotta be one of the fighter
leave
pilots.
Right.
And the jet flying around.
Right. Yeah.
Crashing into it or whatever.
It's so, dude. Oh, I love Independence Day so much. I can't believe Dagan and I have not done that on Knockback yet. We have to.
Haven't done that.
It's so brilliant, actually. It's just undercut by its campiness, but it's actually a great sci-fi story about the Roswell crash and the Department of Defense and the reverse engineering craft and shit that seems a little bit more real.
Don't watch the sequel, though.
No, oh my God, the sequels. That might be, I said that the other day on another show. That might be the worst movie I ever saw in the theater ever in my life.
Yeah. It's really that bad. That's true. Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah. Too bad, man. I could have easily given you guys a good sequel. The alien revenge story. Come on, dude. Please. Please. All right. We have some good topics here today. Let me pull up the thread. We have 2 game related topics. We have kind of a nerdy topic. You know what? I'm going to go first and get my shitty topic out of the way, and then we'll get into the things that probably people want to hear about even more. And I guess it ties into what I've been talking about a little bit here. Guys, I've always liked plants. I've always had a plant or two growing some things, maybe trying to grow some things outdoors. When I was a little kid, I really liked being in my yard with my mom and like looking at all the flowers, and we had lilacs and we had lily of the valley, which is like one of my favorite flowers, and all the rest. And this year I've kind of ramped it up to the point where it's like taking time. Like I have to deliberately go, especially in this weather. I have to like deliberately go and tend to my plants. And I want to talk to you guys. Do you guys like plants? Do you have plants inside, indoor plants, outdoor plants? Do you give a shit about any of those kinds of things? Do you have a green thumb? I'll tell you a little bit about what's going on here around the Moriarty household. Is first of all, I have beautiful grass, right? And you got to keep the grass. That's fundamental. Some of my grass is starting to get shocked because it's so hot out. Like it's not getting enough water. Obviously, water runs down on a point of gravity. So like the highest points on your yard will start getting dry. And I literally sit out there for like 10 or 15 minutes. You're supposed to soak your lawn when that happens, like soak the spot. And I just sit there for like an hour, just soaking parts of my lawn, just spacing out entirely, like don't even know what's going on around me. So it starts there. That's the fun foundation. Then you have your kind of perennials, right? I have a lot of perennials, and the difference between a perennial plant and an annual plant, for people that don't know, perennial plant comes back, an annual plant dies and never comes back. So there are two different kind of strata of plants. You have your perennials, your bushes, and all that kind of stuff. I'm watering those. I'm taking care of everything. Because my neighborhood's pretty nice, but I'm paying attention to people's yards. Like some people are paying attention to what's going on, and some people aren't. I even got an email address from the people I bought an email from the people I bought my plants from, that are like just a mass email being like, it's so fucked up right now. You guys really need to go outside and water your plants. So I have those going, but then I have a bunch of annuals that I've purchased. I have these beautiful purple annuals flowers around my mailbox. I have these beautiful, really robust orange and red flowers going up to the stairs. I have zinnias out front on the railings. I have marigolds going up the stairs. I have a really nice setup going on, and I'm really enjoying the process because you get to kind of know the plants. They're all a little different. Some need water, some don't. Some love sun, some don't. Watching them kind of change and adapt. And there's something really satisfying of like standing in front of my yard and just looking at it, being like, wow, this is like pretty nice. Just by putting out in a little bit of work with the flowers, going into the nursery to buy all that stuff or whatever. And then the other part of it, there's two other parts, I guess. I love trees. That's my favorite thing. I have a bunch of trees growing on my yard. And we just got a ginkgo tree, actually. Little Asian flavor, perhaps, on my yard. But we have a bunch of different things. You got to water those, deep water those, and all that kind of stuff. And then I've got the vegetables going in the backyard. And I got some carrots going, broccoli rabe, aka rapini. I've got, I was growing Walla Walla onions, but I didn't transplant them quickly enough, so those are gone. Because it is a learning process, of course. And a few other things, cucumbers I'm growing. And then I have my indoor plants. So I probably have like 10 indoor plants now, including, my friends, a fairly vibrant marijuana plant, which I've been growing. So you don't really get seeds in your weed anymore, from like dispensaries. And there was a seed in one of my things, and I just set it aside like last year, just in this little plate we have, like a ring plate we have in our kitchen. And then I looked at it like a couple months ago, and I'm like, maybe I should just plant this and see what happens. And the thing grew almost immediately. Like it's killing. And I already had to transplant it once into a bigger pot.
Oh, wow.
And it's not a clone. So I don't think it's going to bud. I don't know how to make it do that. Like not most marijuana plants don't bud. But it would be cool to just have one, like a big marijuana plant. I knew a couple people that just had, like, I guess they're male marijuana plants. I'm not entirely sure how you would describe it or whatever, but they just have them in their house and they don't bud or anything, but they're just like a cool aesthetic. So I have that going and a couple other things. So yeah, I'm really enjoying the process. And I was curious if you guys are down with any of this at all. It's what I've learned is first of all, lawn care is like a massive thing on YouTube. And that's where I learn a lot of my different tips. Like people like love lawn care, and I'm like, that's my shit. I love lawn care too. But what I've also realized, and not so surprising, is that the plant situation on Reddit and all these other places, man, a lot of things going on out there. So I'm certainly not the only one, but I'm wondering if this touches any of you guys. Cog, do you have a green thumb?
I knew you was going to go to me. I'm going to destroy this topic. Man, I do not. I am like, I was looking at this topic. I was really trying to think. I was like, man, what experience do I have with this? You know, as a kid growing up in the South Bronx, who pretty much primarily urban environment, and we didn't get a backyard until we moved out of the projects later, until what we consider the hospital house in my teens. I remember, this is my earliest memory. I remember like in school, we had a project and it was like taking care of a plant, and then the kids get to bring it home, and then you upkeep, and then you bring it back. My plant died. I have no green thumb in me. I have no affiliation, no type of affinity for it. It's one of those things where I respect people who can like grow vegetables, and I think that's cool. Like being able to live off the land, so to speak. I think that's super dope. But when we did move and we had the backyard, it was kind of like an area for like the dogs to be and stuff like that, as opposed to like, hey, we're planting stuff and doing stuff. And then the other weird thing why I kind of hate it is that it took a while for me to kind of get into like eating healthy with salads and stuff like that. So I remember one of my biggest detractors with like taste is like when something tastes too leafy and plant like, it would be a deterrent to my taste buds. So that again started my hatred for botany. When I went to the botanical gardens, you know, I you know what I will say this, Colin? I appreciate the beauty of plants. Like when you see a beautiful arrangement of, you know, lilacs, you know, dandelions, all stuff, dope stuff. Where I started to get an affinity for it, when you mentioned the Asian stuff, it's actually, obviously I'm a big fan of Asian culture and stuff like that. I remember playing a game like Ghost of Tsushima and stuff like that. And you see the cherry blossoms, and that's some really beautiful scenic stuff. And so as I got older, my plant hate has decreased and my appreciation has gone up. But as far as me, myself, taking care of, doing, nurturing, planting, soil and dirt, it's not me. So I respect y'all. I appreciate all y'all do for keeping up the ecosystem and things healthy and the circle of life that we need as plants. But as far as me taking care, not so much.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. I mean, I would imagine it's not for most people, which is, and I don't really know why I even took to it. I was trying to figure that out because it is like, I do remember as a little kid in elementary school, you would do things like, what were they? Where it was like,
they're like little projects.
Like a lima bean or something.
Yes.
Right.
And grow it.
And because lima beans, I guess, like just grow and like they're easier to grow for children, I guess. And I remember doing little projects like that. And I guess that kind of set it in motion for me. What's funny about it is that I'm not really a biology person where I'm like, I think animals are cool, but like when people are like, what's your favorite animal? I'm like, I don't know, dude. Like, I don't give a shit about animals really. Like it's not that I don't want them to go away or that they're not interesting in some right. And they have their it's just like, I never took to like loving animals or loving the study of biology, the study of zoology, all those kinds of things. I just really loved plants and specifically trees as a kid. I don't know why. And I think a lot of it was they're kind of hard to fuck up in some way. And it's just time. And you kind of see the maturity. It's very satisfying. There's something about that. Yeah.
I'll give you like to see the nurturing and the growth of what I want to say you created, but what you have nurtured that becomes something else. I think that process is dope. Like to see it and you know that you've nurtured it, and then like a tree, I think that's amazing because especially this really majestic, this huge, thing. And I think I definitely have an appreciation for that. And I think that's where it comes with me with parks. Like, saying just when you go to a park and it's just well arranged and, the way it's upkept, I think there's a beauty to that, right? There's a serenity in that. And I think that's where I have more of appreciation now that I'm older.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. It's good shit. Yeah, I love the aesthetic. Like you said, the botanical gardens and just going to really professional gardens and seeing people's flowers. I'm very feminine with that kind of stuff. It's funny, man. Like I appreciate because like Micah gives me credit for it when people come to our house and are like, oh, they'll tell her, they're like, oh, the flowers look great. Like just assuming. And she'll be like, oh, it's Colin. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. It is a little, I said that around my dad though, because my dad's really into gardening too. And he's like, it's not feminine.
He puts you on it. He's like, we ain't doing that.
I should be clear that the vegetable growing I'm doing is very limited. And there's actually a joke in like growing, like a growing plants meme kind of where it's like, oh, time to spend $80 to get my $3 worth of tomatoes, you know, because it's really a hobby. Like there's no reason to do it for the food. Like you have to really plant in the ground extensively to really make it worth your while in that way. So no one really does it for that reason. Like I can't live off the land. I'll have like cilantro and a head of broccoli rabe and like a cucumber, you know, but there's something cool about just that process from beginning to end of doing it. I'm really disappointed my onions died, but I didn't know, you know, that was the thing I was most excited about because I love my onions. All right, Brad.
Yes.
Do you get out there? Orange County is a great place to grow.
Yes, I very much enjoy flowers, gardening, all that stuff. I'm big into all that stuff too. Colin, like you, I grew up my parents are both into it. Flowers, planting, everything. I have an appreciation for the green, for nature. I love nature. I'm not a person that wants to, you know, go camping for 5 days. I like to hang out in nature for like the day, then go home. That's the kind of person I am. Like, but I adore nature. I think it's fucking fascinating. I love all the gardening stuff like that. Like, have you ever been to Huntington Library, Colin?
No.
In California? It is, you would fucking love it. It's like this huge estate with a bunch of museums and themed gardens within it. There's like a California garden, an Australian garden. There's like a mausoleum. There's a Japanese garden, Chinese garden of just all these different types of plants and everything. You would fucking love that. And of course, a bunch of history stuff throughout it. But yeah, I mean, I still like going to, there's this place called Rogers Gardens kind of near me that sells, it's like a nursery also, but they have like a bunch of plants in it. So I love going there. I have a strong affinity for plants, especially flowers. I really like flowers a lot. I'm not like super familiar with all their names. Like my mom is like super good about all that stuff. I can just ask her, but I have a strong feeling for them. I love anything green out there in the world. It's very comforting to me. Because you guys are talking about, you know, Ghost of Tsushima, Cog brought up that example. It's like, man, nothing brings you more peace than just like being in that environment, soaking it all up. It's wonderful. It's good for the soul, I think. And there is something special, Colin, like you're saying, watching this thing you start nurture very slowly. It's very satisfying. It's like a video game mechanic, you know? It's like you're doing some crafting game. You're just watching it grow over time. It's very nice. You get to see something start from zero and to grow into something completely different. It's awesome.
Yeah, I agree. When they built this house, they put a sapling in the front of the house, obviously, like for every house, and they would grow into big trees ultimately. And I used to be able to like wrap my whole hand around like the and now it's just like I can't even get my hand around a portion of it. And there's something, and also my one of my nephews, my godson Finn, gave me a small jade plant when I moved in, and it's huge now. You almost start to care about it like a tertiary family member or something. Yeah. In the sense, like, it's like, damn, this thing is huge. Like, it's just been going and going and going, just soaking up the sun in the window. Got to water it. You got to take care of it. Yeah. It's cool that you relate. Yeah. You sent the link here for the Huntington
Library. Yeah. If you're in California, dude,
Gardens.
Southern California, you got to check this shit out.
Oh yeah. This is good.
It's an amazing place,
dude. And I just, flowers are especially, flowers, Dagan always says I get like, this is when I get like religious and philosophical with weird shit, but it's like you look at a flower and you're like, did this really just come out of nowhere?
Yeah.
Like how does it know to be so beautiful? How does it know? Like, seriously, how does it know to be so aesthetic?
That is like the most stoner thing I could ever imagine. It's like, how does it know to be so beautiful?
Well, think about that. I mean, it is ridiculous, but think about like single cell organisms or things like you could wrap your mind around these very limited things growing out of nothing. I can anyway. And we know that that's what ultimately happened, I think, unless you're a religious person, which is fine. But it's just crazy that you can get from that to like a zinnia. It's like, what the fuck is this? Like, I don't understand. I was actually, it is another stoner thing. Like Micah actually said the same thing when I was saying it with the weed seed. I was looking at the weed plant. I'm like, how do you know? Like, how do you know from this little thing exactly what to do? It's totally amazing. And I think it's, God, the natural world is like so wonderful. I almost hope it isn't supernatural because it would be insane if it really was true, which I think it probably is, that this just happened. That's the craziest part of all. You could see a god creating a beautiful flower. It's actually crazier that it just would spawn. You know. Anyway.
Wait, I'm curious, Colin. You love trees too, right?
I do.
The redwoods up there, since you were in NorCal.
Oh yeah, dude. I used to go to the redwoods up at Muir all the time. They are, you can't even appreciate it. Like, you know, fundamentally when you see a picture how big it is, but you don't know until you're there. It's like, holy shit, how the fuck did this thing grow so big? You know, where you can walk through them, you know?
Yeah, it's wild. Didn't they have like the drive-through
you can
one
drive
or
through
whatever?
them.
Yeah.
Some of those trees are thousands of years old. I love that shit. They have the amazing like slice of a huge tree that fell, and then they just have the dates on the different rings. So it's like, this is when the Vikings landed in Newfoundland. This is when Columbus landed in, and it's like, this tree was just there. It was just there. You know, it's amazing. It's an amazing piece of history. My dad used to say that shit. It's like, this is like the old spirit of the tree. Like, it's seen everything that's gone on here. It's been here. It's been chilling. Yeah. It's
quickly, Cog, I love the story you're telling about how kind of where you grew up wasn't very common, or not. I mean, there's trees obviously there, but not probably like where me and Colin were from. Much more. And like your disdain for it, you're just kind of like, man, fuck them trees, kind of thing like that for a little bit.
I'm just an urban city kid, so it's just, you know, it was one of those things you don't have an appreciation for young because you're really not around it, right? But then
I guess so.
Older, and you get a little bit more cultured, and you go out of your space, and then you go, oh, you know, because I think it kind of may appreciate a little bit. I think like New Yorkers sometimes. We are in our own bubble. We stay and think that's the world. And it takes a lot for us to go out of our comfort zone and go see stuff and travel and stuff like that. I mean, I have friends. I remember when I moved to Jersey City, people were acting like I was in a third world country. I'm like, like it's literally like go through a tunnel or a bridge. Like that's New Yorkers. They're just very self-contained. The world revolves around us kind of thing. And it takes us a while to get outside of that.
It wasn't until I lived in New England that I really appreciated growing up on Long Island. It was just normal. It's like, it's like 16 miles wide at the most. And it's just this really obviously long place. And it's just beaches, and like a highway runs past, you know, through the middle of it. And there's a bunch of people living there, millions of people. And I never appreciated the fact that I just was trapped there in some sense. We used to travel and go places sometimes, but you don't just go. It's like, oh, let's drive to this state, or let's go here to buy this thing. It's like, no, you have to like go all the way through New York City and then around and out of New York to get anywhere. And so it's like, and then, you do just get accustomed to thinking that it's always everywhere's like that. And it's in fact, nowhere's like that.
Facts. Big time. Big time.
Locke, let's go to you. Do things still grow in Europe, or are you guys basically rip the nutrients out of
Chernobyl out there?
Yeah. So far they're still growing, yeah. But I can barely take care of myself, so I'm not a really big plant person. I have a cat, and that goes fine. But a plant. When I moved into this apartment, the guy who lived here before me had this tiny plant, and he told me, "Well, I'm not going to move it. I'm just going to leave it here if that's okay with you." So I said, "Sure." And the result, I think you can see it in the reflection there.
Oh yeah,
I think grew fucking huge, and I don't know what to do with it. Like I keep moving it to like a bigger pot, which I guess is the stuff you have to do. But there's like this new stuff growing out of it, and every once in a while there's this flower growing out of it. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it's called. I don't know what it does. I hope it's not poisonous. I don't think it is, but it's. I like having this thing. Like normally I don't really care about plants, or I never really thought about it that way. But I like having this thing here, or thing. It's a living thing, I guess. But growing up, I remember my parents were both really into gardening. We had a pretty big family, and we lived in a small house, but we had a pretty big backyard. And I remember every time my dad got angry at work or at my mom or at us, the kids, he would go work in the garden. And I would watch him out of the window, and he would just mow the lawn, or he would like tend to the flowers or cut down a tree. So that really calmed him down every time. And so did my mom, really. They never did it together, but I have distinct memories of my mom like buying these weird flowers from foreign countries and planting them in our garden. I remember we had this big tree with like red buds. I think you guys call it a velvet tree. Is that possible?
Yeah, let me look it up.
And a velvet tree has like these big red buds, and they almost look. Yeah, so you see those big red buds, right? Like they almost look like weed a little bit. And when I was still pretty young, but I had two brothers growing up, and one of my brothers was a bit of a scumbag, always trying to hustle people for money. And I remember one day the cops showed up at our door, and they told my parents that my brother was trying to sell drugs at school. my parents were like, what the fuck? What are you doing? What's going on? Because we were not that kind of family, or we're not that kind of country, really. Like, people are really calm about that here. But it turned out that my brother had apparently taken those red buds of those velvet trees and put them in little baggies, went to school and told people there that it's a new kind of weed called red bud. And just charge people. Yeah. Charge people money for that.
That's awesome. That rules.
Yeah. In hindsight, it was pretty cool. Back then, maybe not so much, but yeah, in hindsight, it was pretty cool. Except I think those things are pretty poisonous, so I don't know if anyone really smoked it.
Yeah, hopefully not. Yeah,
sounds pretty dangerous.
I put a link in the chat if anyone wants to look at it. Yeah, that's a great description of it, because that's exactly what it looks like. It looks like bud.
Yeah, it does, right? Yeah. So I remember growing up between those things, and then I had a friend in college. I think maybe this is something for you, Colin, too, or for you, Brett, maybe too, who was really in like bonsai trees.
Oh yeah, dude, bonsai is awesome. Yeah.
And those were really, really cool. I really liked the stuff he had going with those. Like, he really tended to them like they were a pet almost to him. And for myself, when I was still smoking weed, I had a plan too. But dude, I looked like every idiot stoner. I just looked up online what to do and have like the little light bulbs, but it never worked. And then if I tried to smoke it, it tasted like awful and had no effect. So I think I'm pretty bad at plants, sadly, but I think it's cool. I think it's cool you guys are into it. I wish I was into it. Cool. It seems like it's really zen. Like, it calms you down, and like you said, you get the opportunity to create something beautiful, which is awesome. So it's kind of like maybe like a pet, or maybe like not like a child, I guess. But it's cool that you can see something blossom. And I think when I was 16 or 17, my dad took me to the redwoods in close to San Francisco. So I have vivid memories of those trees. And like you said, that was like mind blowing to me, because all the trees here are pretty small in Europe. Like, we don't have those big fuckers here. So that was amazing.
It apparently has something to do with the microclimate of the North Bay in California, where it never really rains, but it's always foggy. And they're always like just absorbing little tiny bits of water. And apparently that's like what really fed that breed of tree. And obviously when people first saw them, they were very attracted to cutting them down. So it's a good thing that we quickly, John Muir and I think a lot of the other guys over there like really help protect California. I've said this before. I mean, Brad is born and raised in California. I lived there for, 14 years, I guess. It is gorgeous. There's nothing like California. That's what's such a shame about parts of what's happening to it. It's like, it's so beautiful. It's like its own country. It's got everything that you could possibly imagine, from the most beautiful beaches to the highest mountains. You can do world-class skiing there. You can do world-class scubaing there. You can be in the middle of the hottest desert. You could be in like these crazy microclimates with huge trees or vineyards, or all the stuff, the citrus groves and the avocados and all the things that grow in the almonds and everything that grows in the central part of the state. It's fucking awesome.
Yeah, man.
It's beautiful. It's stunning, in my opinion.
We used to have tons of orange trees by us. I mean, they're all gone now, sadly, but those are fucking awesome. I miss those. That's so sick.
That's like so my ex in San Francisco lived in a place that had a lemon tree in the backyard. And I don't know if the climate agreed with it. And I was like, wow, I used to make old fashions with the lemons from the from the tree. And I'm like, this is pretty fucking cool. And people used to come and steal lemons from it. Like, you would catch I used to catch this old Asian woman stealing lemons from
the tree. That's really funny. We had like a world-class plum tree in my backyard growing up. And they were like the best plums I've ever had. I've never had a plum as good as ours. And people, like my friends, would come over just to have plums and stuff like that. They were so good. I was going to ask you about that too, Colin. Are you into like growing fruits or anything like that? Do you have a fruit tree?
I don't have a fruit tree. We are in a weird, I think it's like climate. The United States is split into these climate zones, and I think we're 6 or 7 or something like that. And fruit doesn't do well here because we are too high. It's hot enough, but the frost is a problem. Like, it's unfortunate because it's the same with palm trees. Like, once you get to the Carolinas, you can really start growing palms, like palmettos and different palm looking things, and then real palm trees. And we just can't have them here because I'd love to have that too.
Damn. But, yeah, because we have a lot in California. I mean, they grow a lot of food here.
Oh yeah. People don't know, man. People disrespect California that are not in California, and I get that because I think it is a cartoonish place in a lot of different
Mhm.
ways, and I know that as someone who lived there, so I know damn well how cartoonish it is, especially in San Francisco with like the capital of cartoonishness. But it is a vital place that's beautiful. It's got great people in it, obviously, and it feeds a lot of the country too. So when people say like, "Oh, California, fall into the ocean," or whatever, it's like, well, it's gonna take
Please
all of your
don't.
avocado plants with it. But yeah, what is that?
I don't want to
They-
drown.
They call it Little Europe here because it has everything that Europe also has, but just bigger and maybe better or more beautiful.
That's
Um,
interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
It's a good thing we
What
stole
an
it.
insult. What an
You,
insult.
you stole it. We gave it to you.
Well, we stole it from the Mexicans.
Oh, yeah. That's
Well, we went to a war for it.
Yeah,
We won a war.
We had a straight up war of conquest in the West, and
Yeah.
took so much of it. But that's just the way it goes. Thanks, punks. All right, none of my people were even here yet. We had nothing to do with it. Fortunately or unfortunately, we reaped the benefits, I guess. All right,
Dude, I recently traced back our family lineage here. We've been
Oh.
here since like the 1600s, I think.
your
Wow.
your
Like-
family came. So where did
Very
you come?
early. We've been here a long time.
Where
Our family.
in the East Coast did you guys migrate from? Do you know?
I don't know where
Like
we're
what
from.
colony?
Like I did like my whole DNA testing like that. My last name's English, and I'm mostly English. So probably from somewhere around the UK is mostly where I'm from.
Right, but when your people
We
came
don't
over-
know because
Yeah.
it's been so far back. It's hard to trace it. But that's how far back we've apparently traced some of our family.
If you come
Wow.
from, if your family really did come here in the 1600s, it's reasonable that you might be like Mayflower people. You should.
It's
look into that.
possible, yeah.
Yeah.
We were here before, like, 1776 and all that stuff. We were
Yeah.
here before all that.
Oh yeah, my people weren't here anywhere close. Like
Also,
Yeah,
apparently
yeah.
I'm related to Andrew Jackson, Colin.
sick. So
Oh
if
my
you knew
God.
Andrew
Wow.
Jackson's lineage,
Ooh.
you should look
Yeah.
up if Andrew Jackson, because they would definitely know if Andrew Jackson claimed lineage to the Mayflower, which was
Yeah,
a
I'm
huge
curious
political
about that,
thing
yeah.
back then. Like that was a really strong thing to do. So you would know that. Then you would know if you were related to him that you do indeed come.
Yeah, my grandma, like, traced a lot of it back, I guess. And some side of our family was, yeah. So,
The Irish side of my family came over right
Ooh.
before the Civil War and fought in the Civil
Cool.
War. And then my Italian side didn't come over until the 1930s. So
yeah, we have, like, no history that I'm aware of, like, our European ancestors or you people in the United Kingdom. Like, I don't know anything about, like, that because it's been so long, I guess. We've always been here for a long time, I think.
yeah. Yeah, that's what I love about America personally is like the adoption of the culture, no matter where you come from or like the skin
Yeah.
color and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I know it's very trite, like everyone's like, oh, I fucking get it. But it's really actually a remarkable thing. Like being
Yeah, it
American
is.
is not
It is,
like
yeah.
being Japanese. You'll never be truly Japanese if you're not Japanese, even if you're a citizen of the country or whatever. But I believe a person who literally is off the boat can be American very quickly, and it's good shit. Anyway, okay. Well, I'm satisfied. Thank you guys for getting
Mhm.
through my topic. Now we can get to the good topics.
I like that topic.
Oh, thank you.
It was
Talking about
actually really
plants,
good.
dude,
It's
that's
fun. Yeah, it
cool.
was
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Yeah, I think Micah just rolls her eyes at me sometimes now because like when we do our nightly walks, we just take the same walk over and over again. But there are a few people in our neighborhood that really love flowers and do that kind of stuff too. And I'm like, man, look how fucking beautiful that shit is. Like there are flowers where I'm like, why is it so beautiful? How it's so beautiful? It's fake looking. It's crazy. I can't. And they do it to attract bugs, and none of it makes any sense.
Ooh.
The older I get, the more I'm like, maybe we're in a simulation, or like this was really created by a god or something, because it just doesn't. I saw someone tweet about the fish with the light bulb in front of it,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The
and
angler
someone had
or
used that as
whatever?
an example, and they're like, natural selection made a fish grow a light bulb in front of its face. And I'm like, yeah, that's a good point. Like, what the fuck is that? How is that? How can that be? Like, it just morphed into all these different things and then suddenly grew a light bulb. And it's like, yeah, the selection was like, oh, that's good. That's good. That's good. And then it just stayed.
Mhm.
That's kind of crazy.
Season of life.
The naturalist in me is like, that is what happened, Colin. But the philosopher in me is like, no way. Anyway, thank you guys for listening. All right, let's look at the rest of these topics. I'm staring at our email now. Yeah, let's go to you, Cog. And this is a great
Yo.
topic, one I can relate
Yeah.
to because I own an indie studio, so maybe I have something to add to this. But I'll be curious about what you have to say here.
Yeah, this was on my mind recently, and I was actually surprised. I was looking over the list. I thought for sure Constellation has done this topic on indie games, and I just wanted to get you guys feel about it as far as do you gravitate towards indies these days? What's your consumption like, and then their place in the industry. And I think for me, it's interesting because growing up, I always loved the big bombastic games, the arcade games, the AAA games, the pomp and circumstance and the big production value and graphical fidelity pushed and yada, yada, yada. And then as I've gotten older, and I think, Colin, we've had this discussion before, which is there's just too many damn games, right? It is not enough time to play everything. And as I've gotten older, I have such an appreciation for like the 8 to 10 hour experience, right? And I think that's the first part. And then the second part has been, I just feel like the indie space, the more I, talk to developers, I see so much creativity in the space. And I'm just like, wow, they're pushing things forward. They're doing different things because they're taking the risk. And then the other thing is obviously, for Defining Duke and obviously play on Xbox is my primary platform like 90% of the time. It was a lot of times I always get that stuff where people say, hey, I've got nothing to play. And people tell me that. And I'm like, how? Like I've literally sat down and made a spreadsheet. Right. And this is from the Series X inception to now, every single year. Right. And I listed it, everything I play first party and everything I play Game Pass. Right. And the way I internalize it, if it's on Game Pass, it's pseudo and exclusive because I'm not going to spend, the money on another platform since it's there for the service. And I looked at the year that quote unquote Xbox had its worst year, right? Where it was like, remember, Starfield got delayed, Redfall got delayed. It was 2022. And I looked at everything I played that year. And I was blown away. So this is the list. I had Nobody Saves the World. I had Trek to Yomi, which I loved. I actually liked that game. Maddie didn't like it as much, but we fight on that. Iron Chronicle Rising, Vampire Survivor, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge.
Tribute.
As Dust Falls, which I loved. It was just unique little game that you could, people who's a non-gamer can play and do the story. You could pick choices. I don't know if any of you guys played it, but I actually love this game. It had a very bespoke art style, kind of still picture, almost like the Grand Theft Auto loading screen kind of thing. You know what I'm saying?
Cool.
But I love this game. I got people to play it, friends, family members, and how the story with the tracks, almost like Mass Effect-ish, some people could survive, some people could die. Anyway, so that's that. Power Wash Simulator, which me and Ben Smith kind of bonded over. He actually, I laughed. I'm like, I'm not playing no power. He's like, Cog, you got to try it. I'm telling you. Played that. And then Midnight Fight Express, which was kind of like a beat 'em up, old school. Think Sifu light. Remember Sifu?
Yeah.
But think like Sifu light.
Sifu.
And I love Sifu. So martial arts, break them down. And then the last one, this one for me, I really loved. It was called Somerville. And Somerville was from the people who made Inside, which is one of my favorite indie games of all time. I come from the era of Eric Chahi, the one man guy that made Another World. That's one of my greatest games, that atmospheric, the game doesn't tell you what's going on. You've got to figure out what's going on in this kind of bespoke world. So I just looked at it and I'm like, man, I played so many indie games that year. So basically what I'm trying to do is ask for you guys is that, one, where does indie games start to kind of play for you in this stage of your gaming career, so to speak? And then, what do you take from it? Do you play less? Do you play more? Or hey, maybe you don't play as much. You kind of stick in the AAA space. So let me start with Locke, because I don't get a chance to talk to like too much. I'm curious, Locke. Where do you sit with indies these days?
Well, I used to love indies. I want to say a decade or maybe more so ago, because indie games, like you said, were always innovative and they were new and they gave me something exciting. And those were the games that were experimenting back then with new mechanics. I remember Braid, which recently got remastered.
Oh, yes.
That was an amazing game to me. I think about Hotline Miami, of course, Bastion, recently, like you said, Vampire Survivors, Limbo, Inside. Darkest Dungeon. Oh, great. Rocket League. I think Rocket League.
Rocket League. Yes. PlayStation. Was it PS4 around the early time they had it first?
Yeah, Rocket League was on PS4 first.
Yeah, that was huge. They had it for a while, exclusive. Yes.
Yeah, my the founder of Podcast Beyond, my first podcast, is the
Yeah.
VP of that studio.
Yeah, 'cause I remember that in Resogun during
And
the
I was an early adopter of. I'm proud of myself because I played that game for the first time. I'm like, this game's gonna be fucking huge. And
Yes.
Yeah.
and it was at PSX 2020 or 2014.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing game. I think I have like over 4 or 5. It's one of my most played games on Steam. I love that game.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah. But and now I'm gonna get into the negative stuff, I guess,
Oh,
because
let's
I
go.
don't really play indie games anymore. And the perfect example of that was this Summer Games Fest trailers that we got at the Keighley Summer Game Fest, because we got Boy and Deer and we got Girl and Wolf, and it starts with sad piano music, right? And you have like a girl or a boy and an animal, and there's evil shadows, right? And then there's cute colors, and a moon is shining, and then you get bad platforming. And then you get a sad moment where the animal is older, but he's gonna die maybe. And then the title comes in like Moon Glow 2025. and every single indie game looks that way to me these days, or most of them anyway. Especially at the Keighleys this year. I don't know what it was, but most of them look like that to me. And then that's what got me thinking, like, where is the creativity? I know they're still out there. You guys would know way better than me, of course. I know they're still out there, and I know that people still make them, and they're awesome. And I have a lot of friends who love them and who keep recommending me these new games. But I also have to wonder, like, I think some of these games are maybe like money laundering schemes. Like they're like if you have an indie game that looks exactly like Inside, or exactly like, or at the Keighleys now, 2 indie games that looked almost exactly alike. That's not possible, I think. I mean, there's not 2 teams that have the exact same idea and make the exact same game. I know that's probably an over exaggeration, and there are still great indie games out there, but that's how it looks to me, and that's why I stopped caring all that much about indie games, even though you probably have like a million examples that are still great. But I really miss like the big creative games. Like Bastion was super creative with the narrator and doing something new, or Rocket League was even creative to me, or Braid, like I said earlier, or The Witness. Like those were games that really got me thinking and made me like experience something new, something that I haven't experienced before. So I hope that indie games still do that, or can get back to them. But I just don't see them in my space where I play games, which is my fault, of course. But you guys probably have examples of indie games that do great new stuff.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. If you finish, I get where you're coming from. I think, have you tried Disco Elysium?
Yes, it's one of my favorite games.
Okay, I'm like trying to peddle my drug to you. I'm like, have you tried this? What about it? Of course, I think I got one for you.
I gotta say, I was mostly thinking about console games.
Got
right?
you.
Because
Okay.
on PC, all CRPGs are basically indie games, and CRPGs are my favorite genre. So I didn't count those in with these.
All right,
right?
Yeah, Divinity,
exactly.
man. Whew.
Divinity, even Wasteland. Those are my favorite games of all time. But I'm talking only about console games in this instance.
Okay,
not
enough.
PC games, because I think that's a different platform. Because on PC, anyone can find it, anyone can buy it. I think on console, it's a little bit harder. So, and I think at the Keighleys, those were all multi-platform, I guess.
Yeah.
There were no.
It's not nearly hard enough to publish on.
Yeah, there's way more
trust
indie
me.
games on PC.
Yes.
Consoles.
Yeah,
way more.
absolutely.
And I also think that on PC, they're easier to, if they're good, you'll see them. Like Vampire Survivors got huge on PC. Rightfully so, because it's an amazing game. So simple, but so creative, so new, so fun. Same with what I mentioned it earlier, Hotline Miami. That was also pretty simple, but so cool, so new, so special. And that is PC. PC is the perfect platform for those types of games. But again, I don't know how it is on console. You guys can probably tell me.
Hotline Miami was perfect on Vita, in my opinion, but
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah.
But no, you're right. I mean, that's where do you know the guy? I can't remember the guy's name. I met him a few times, but the director of Hotline Miami has a tattoo, the coolest tattoo I've ever seen, where it's the and I saw it on his, I think it's on his arm, and I was like, holy shit, that's a Mega Man tattoo. You'll appreciate this, Brad. He has it's the password screen for Mega Man 3. That's like Dr. Wily's castle.
Really?
Like the dots. Basically,
Wow,
on
that's
the grid.
crazy.
And I was like, that's
I want the password screen tattooed on me.
yeah, like
that's
it's like,
so
and it's like
crazy.
so obscure, but it's like
Yeah,
it's the password you put in if you wanted to go to Wily's castle, I think.
Dang.
Yeah, that's good shit, dude.
Cool.
Yeah.
No.
That's cool.
Brad,
Mm.
curious. Indie love. Yay, nay?
Yeah. I
yes,
love indie
more?
games.
Where
I
we
love
at?
indie games. I play. To me, it doesn't matter if it's an indie game or not, or AAA. I'm not one of those people. If the game looks cool to me, I'll play it. Like this year for indie games, I've beaten these. I've beaten Gunbrella, Sea of Stars. I guess you could count Hellblade as an indie game, the first one,
Yeah, maybe.
and Crow Country. And it's like, yeah, man, these games are great. I love some of these smaller experiences. I love these weird ideas. I mean, there's a lot of indie games that don't do new things, but just do them well. Like the space is littered with Metroidvanias, and I love those games. So that's where I get fed all those kind of games. So I appreciate that. And of course, like the ultimate indie game, in my opinion, is Shovel Knight. That is like the indie game of indie games to me forever. But it's so weird nowadays because what actually does indie mean now?
Good question. Good point.
Because people think indie game just means smaller game. That's what people think indie game means. And it's like, are we really going to like talk about if they're owned by a humongous publisher or something like that? Like, what was that game? Ollie Ollie World or whatever. I think got nominated for like best indie. And it's like, that's owned by a huge fucking company.
Yeah, Take-Two owns
that game.
Ollie Ollie
Yeah,
World,
exactly.
yeah.
It's like, what actually counts as indie nowadays for a lot of these games? There's of course there's totally independent developers out there, actual independent developers making stuff. Locke brought up Darkest Dungeon and Darkest Dungeon 2, great example. Locke V Rising, baby. I'm pretty sure that's an indie developer. I love that game.
Yeah, I loved it too. But did it do something truly new?
No, that's what I was saying. A lot of them. There are games out there. If you probably dig deep enough, I'm not always playing an indie game just being like, I need something completely new. Like Viewfinder is probably a great example of that, of a game doing something new, or Cocoon doing something like that. There's totally games like that out there. But indie games, if the game just looks cool to me, if it's like, yo, here's a survival horror game, the indie space is littered with those. I'm definitely going to try those out. And so I adore indie games just to get these awesome games. That's all I really care about. But I always just get hung up. I'm like, what is actually indie game? Because everyone seems to have a different definition of what it is. It's a very blanket statement kind of thing. So I'm curious, like, I don't know, what do you guys think counts as an indie game?
Good point. I mean, I'm probably going to defer to Colin on this. Sorry for the cops going by, but it's. I agree with you, Brad. I think that with the Dave the Diver discussion came up, that was a valid point as to, okay, can we really consider that when they have this huge backing or big corporation behind it, as opposed to, for example, I've been interviewing this 2-man team like fresh out of college from HF Studios, making this game called Let Him Cook that I think is absolutely hilarious. It's almost like Brotato and Vampire Survivors had a baby, and it's a whole bunch of food puns, and the game looks amazing to me. And I'm like, that to me considers like part of the indie family, as opposed to just a smaller team from a huge conglomerate. You know what I'm saying? Kind of thing that has all this back. And can we really consider that an indie? And I think it was a high point of discussion from the Game Awards, I believe, with Dave the Diver got nominated. Yeah. It was a huge point of contention. So yeah, I think I kind of lean towards where you're going. Where I don't know if we can put that classification just because it's smaller game that it's necessarily indie. But I'm curious Colin's feedback on this. Man, has a studio, so curious what you feel the distinction is.
Yeah, I mean, I think Lilymo is an indie, like a real indie studio, and I have a problem with this actually too. And we've talked about it a little bit on Sacred. Is it's just the taxonomy in games generally? It needs to be more thorough and robust. Like we need better ways to describe games and genres and all these different things. And words are thrown around that don't even really mean what they're supposed to mean, and people don't think them through. And indie is really one of these words that has been devalued to nothingness at this point.
Right.
And Ollie Ollie World's a really interesting example, but the reality is that there's a million examples of these games. Like Animal Well's a really great example. Like that's not an indie game. Like it was independently made, but it has a publisher, and that you have to go back to like where the term independent comes from in games and like why it is the way it is. Really goes back. I mean, this is kind of nerdy, but it's like everyone knows Atari 2600 was littered with garbage, right? And that everyone was publishing on it. Like really weird companies were publishing games on Atari 2600, like Quaker Oats, right? And like everyone was just putting games on there. And Nintendo came in with the Famicom and the NES and was like, we need a publisher situation. Like everything's going to go through this publisher mantra. PC gaming was always much more independent. They would literally sell their games in like fucking Ziploc bags in local computer stores, right? Like that's literally the way all of that was done in the late 70s and early 80s. But By the time we got to NES, it's like, no, we're going to have a very controlled system of publishers and developers work with these publishers. The publishers fund the games. Sometimes they own the developer, and then the money is split underneath, and you go through these trusted companies. And that was because cartridge development was difficult and cartridges were expensive to make. And then when you got to CD development, PlayStation, to their credit, was very early with Net Yaroze to trying to get people to make games without publishers. And even games that came out of Net Yaroze, Devil Dice, I think, is probably the most notable, ended up being published, I think, by Sony. So there was no true independent publishing. No one could just go and contract a physical run of a game. And by the way, you still can't. When we publish games at Lilymo physically, we're co-publishers. East Asia Soft is still the trusted company that's like doing all of the heavy lifting for us, even though we are co-publishing with them. So it wasn't until really you could say, I guess, the Xbox era, but really like more the Xbox 360 era, certainly, and then PS3, and then WiiWare, where there were true games that were, so you removed the onus of needing a publisher. Now, like, there was nothing to manufacture. There was only something to fund, and you could theoretically do that yourself. And that's where true independent games came from. And I think even games with Microsoft branding on them early on and all of that, they are independent games. That was like the leverage to get them to the console. And so games like Limbo, Shadow Complex, this is Chair, like pre-Epic, right? And all of the rest. That's real independent development. And I do think that, I think, Brad, you said it, people conflate like the aesthetic of the game with what it is, but you could have a AAA looking independent game. And those are going to exist more and more. I mean, Cyberpunk is technically an independent game. You know, that's an entire just self-contained unit of development and publishing. While some of the games that people think are smallest are not independent by definition. So the unfortunate thing is that I know people are going to be like, shut the fuck up, Colin, we get it. But it's just, it goes back to this idea of there being too many games. And unfortunately, this is at every level. And Steam, I love Steam's libertarian mantra of like easy publishing and all of that. But I actually disagree with what Locke said about like good games are found. Like, I actually think we're to the critical point where actually good games are falling through the cracks. And it's not a good place to be. I was talking to Jaffe about this recently, and I was using the example of the game Bat Boy, which is fucking phenomenal. It's a phenomenal 2D side scroller, and no one played it. And I know dude, if that game came out in like 2011, it would have sold 1 million copies.
Yeah.
You know? And so I just think it's almost too easy to make games now, which is a weird thing to say. But what I think is truly indie is self-funding your games. I've not made any money on any of the games we've put out. All the money I would be allotted in Lilymo goes right back to Lilymo. And I make a little bit of money and it goes to Last Stand for the physical publishing of games. That's like a true independent spirit when you're like trying to get from one game to the next and just trying to like figure something out. But we also realize at our studio that we've tried to pick a niche that I don't think a lot of studios are very comfortable in. And I think part of it is the reality that I don't really need to take money from the studio, so we can live a little bit better than we otherwise would have if we were like scraping by. But we want to make NES games. Like, that's what we want to do. You know, that's what we do. We make NES, maybe SNES style games. The RPG is a very 1991, 1992 style JRPG. And we don't want to do anything more than that. And so we know that that's probably going to limit our ability to expose the games and to build anything like really, truly great in the eyes of a modern audience. But we feel like that's the place we need to be because there's just too many indie games, in quotes, and too many studios, and we have to differentiate ourselves from them. I was kidding earlier when you guys were saying, you know, how many games are on PC. I was noting, and I think there was crosstalk, and you guys might not have heard me, where it's like, it's too easy to publish on PlayStation. There's too much garbage on PlayStation, too much garbage on Xbox. And people are starting to conflate that just like they did in the phone space with independent games. And so we have to have a conference as an industry where I keep using the reference of like when the different space organizations get together and figure out like what's a planet and all that kind of stuff. It's like, and then you kind of follow those rules. It's like, why can't we do that as like developers, publishers, media outlets, and all that, and have some sort of organization where it's like, this is how we talk about games, this is how we understand them, and this is what things mean.
I think a lot of people would have backlash with a lot of that because you would see someone on there inevitably that you don't agree with or you think is dumb. And there would be like, imagine people being like, we are the ones to decide what gamers have to classify shit. That would never happen. Never.
We can't go to the council.
Yeah,
we can't
people
go to the Unify.
people get mad enough about the Game Awards already, you know?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So imagine if like, this is it now. We're all assembling at the table. This is the rules now.
Yeah, I don't even know how it would work because it's like you would need to have professional organizations, which I know exist. So like there are professional scientific organizations, then they go. And I think that they have like maybe representatives on some sort of panel, but then they vote. It's kind of like owning a share of a company.
Right.
And so like, could you do something like that? I don't
Maybe
know.
if you
I
had,
don't
like-
think so. I don't even think anyone would be interested in doing that. We can't even unionize our developers.
No.
So
That's another thing. Yeah.
not that I think that would be good or bad. I mean, that's in the eye of the beholder, but it would probably be pretty bad for some of the companies and pretty good for other companies. And some of them do voluntarily. I saw someone got purchased recently and like voluntarily acknowledged like the union drive within the developer, which I think is smart if you want to retain your people, but that's a whole nother topic. So yeah, that's where I see indie games. Like as far as playing them, I play a shit ton of indie games. I love.
Yeah, I was about to ask you, like, what's your consumption like these days?
Oh, pretty heavy. Let me see if I can go to my trophies. While I was playing, you brought up Tribute because you brought up the TMNT Shredder's Revenge game, which is awesome, and I love Tribute from the Mercenary Kings days. I think that game is dope. So their game Panzer Paladin just came to PlayStation. It's been on Switch for years, so I was playing that. But recent games that I would consider, so like, it's funny, man. Power Wash Simulator is a classic indie, except for that's a Square Enix game, so it's really not, right? And then I'm looking at the games I played recently. Ion Fury is an indie game, I guess, but 3D Realms published it. System Shock is actually an indie game because it started before Night Dive was owned by Atari, and I don't think Atari actually even owns the rights to it in that deal. Animal Well is not technically an independent game.
Shout out to Donkey.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a cool game. I platinumed it, and I think it's cool. I think it's dope as hell that that's what he's doing. I have this fantasy of kind of retiring from maybe the podcast side in the next decade or whatever, and just dealing with Lilimo and investing in games like that. And so it's really cool to see someone kind of lay the groundwork for the possibilities of doing that. Because I see games, I get people coming up to me every once in a while and being like, do you guys want to invest in this game or do this and that? And I'm like, the honest answer is yes. Some of your games look dope and I would like to invest in them. I'm just not, I would need to be hyper focused. Like I would be producing your game basically if I was putting my own money into it. And I'm not there yet. So, but yeah, a lot of it is, what I'm looking at my list here and noticing is like, so like Alan Wake 2 is an indie game, right? I mean, Remedy owns the whole, it's a if you're looking at indie games as being like a vertical monopoly of like stem to stern production and publishing of a game, then, but it's really not. And I know that's not what people mean. That's why we need a better way to talk about it. But yeah, I play a lot. I probably buy like an indie game, like I play a lot of really obscure shit. Like Gravity Circuit was a really obscure game that I loved. That's another game that I think fell through the cracks that people would have loved 10 years ago. That game Skur Ritual, which is like a Black Ops zombies mode kind of game, is I guess a indie game. And that's probably in the spirit of that too. I think that was made by like 5 people. So I don't know. I love the whole ecosystem of games. I just think we need a better way to sift the wheat from the chaff, because I know that it's subjective, but at some point it's actually not. When you have if you had a volume of games and you were like cut 50% of them and you went on Steam or PSN, you really couldn't do that. And you wouldn't think that a lot of people wouldn't make the same answer, make the same answers. I think they would. Actually.
I mean, yeah, you could cut a lot.
Just like you use your objective eye in a subjective way to say like, all right, I'm not into 4X games, but does this look like a fucking reasonable 4X game? Does it pass like the fucking barest minimum bar? Yes, obviously. Next, here's a game with AI generated thumbnail art and it's made for getting trophies in 2 minutes. Does it belong on PSN? Nope. Next. It's like, it's not that difficult, you know? It's crazy how easy it would be. It fucking annoys the shit out of me, actually. But that's a whole other thing.
I had a quick question for you. Did you check out G.I. Joe Wrath of Cobra?
Yeah, I heard bad things about it.
Yeah, I know. I was gonna. I played it. I thought about you.
So yeah, tell me about it.
Yeah, and I was like, man, it's classic, 2D beat 'em up. But I'm just like, it's still not enough there, not enough meat. But they've got the tropes, they've got the selectable characters. You got your Dukes, you got your Snake Eyes, you got. Now I will say this: the artwork for Cobra, as being you a big fans of Cobra, looks superb. Like the troopers, the Crimson Guardsmen are there.
Oh,
You're
Crimson
like,
Guards,
okay,
cool. Yeah.
so you got. So for us, in nostalgic purposes, we'll like it because of you could tell there's a care for the accuracy of how they're represented, but. The game itself is probably not the deepest, not that. So, but it's a guilty pleasure game.
Yeah, man. It's coming to Switch, I think, first and PC. So I'll wait till it comes to PlayStation. And I'll play it then. Or maybe I'll get it on Switch. I don't know. Probably not. If it's no good.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Here's the link to it. It does look good. I like the aesthetic of it. That's one of the few licenses that I would earnestly love for Lily-Mo, because I would love to make. Do you remember the two NES G.I. Joe games? One was by Taxon. I can't remember. The other one was. They were both pretty good. Capcom style side scrollers, kind of Contra-like, not nearly as good as Contra, obviously. And what was cool about them is they really got into the weeds. Like, it wasn't the bore. I'm so bored of like fucking Scarlet and Duke and all this stuff. But they had like,
get into the
like the weeds, Like, let's get into the weeds. There's so many characters. Can we fucking talk about someone else other than Storm Shadow for 1 minute?
The ninjas, man.
Yeah, the ninjas are cool.
That's the ninja craze of the 80s,
I have my Storm Shadow lamp. I love my Storm. I love Storm Shadow.
Clean. I didn't know you had that. Nice.
But yeah, it's just so annoying. I promise there are more characters than just this.
Fair enough.
Yeah, so that's where I stand on that. I don't know if it's such a broad. You could almost do an indie game themed Constellation with 4 topics. I mean, that's how deep the topic is, because it's so fascinating. Like the infusion of new ideas, and this was already said, but new ideas in the spirit of risk taking into games was much needed, because that was kind of the unintentional consequence of having a really strict publisher pipeline, was the literal kind of numeric NES era. Like, you can't publish more than a few games a year. And then like getting into the point where it's like, well, we don't want to compete with ourselves. We're not going to make too many investments and whatever. And it's like, well, what if you can make a game for $50,000? And then like, what if you made $10 million on it? That's pretty nice, right? And that's what I think people started getting involved in. And I think I know that if you guys want to Google around about it, there's a story about a game that was on PS3. You guys definitely won't remember, called Retrograde. No. It was like a PS3 exclusive digital game. And the guy ended up spending like too much time and too much money on it, and it bombed. And that was kind of the beginning of what I felt like the bubble was bursting, where it's like he spent $500,000 in like 2 or 3 years on it. And it's like, nope. Yeah. Like you missed your window or whatever. That's how quickly it closed.
That's how quickly. No, you're absolutely right. And you made me think. Shout out a good friend of mine. His name's Stephen Danton. And I was chasing this game. It's called Unto the End. And it was kind of like a side scroller, Souls-like Games of Thrones kind of looking main character. And I thought it was very cool, complex. And it kind of went away. Then he came back. And I asked him, like, hey, whatever happened to this? I remember you guys showed it at an indie showcase, whatever. And then he the funding. And this guy was from a big, situation. He moved his whole family. Him and his wife made it. I was like, the risk involved is so much. And at first I was worried, like you said, that he missed his window. And then I ended up happening. He's like, hey, no, check out. I forgot what year it was. He ended up getting a Game Pass bag at the showcase. And it came out. So I was happy for him. But you have so many stories of not that stuff happening. And then if you don't make Game Pass on Xbox, like what happens then, right? So it's an interesting discussion, just like their place and how things are playing out in the industry right now. But
what was that Xbox game that just came out a few weeks ago that really did well? You know what I'm talking about? That like sold like 50,000 copies or something. Was
it the action figure one?
Hyper. What is it? Hypercharge?
Something like that.
Yeah, it's like the toy action figure one. Yeah,
it was cool to see people come out for that. Like
I was surprised by that,
because some people were like being like 50,000 copies. It's like, dude, we've never sold a game. Our highest selling game was 35,000 copies. That's a lot, and we make much smaller games. Their game's 3 times more expensive than our game are. It's like, wow, that's on Xbox.
Yeah,
I was like, that's pretty nice. I mean, we're not one of these developers. Like we want to bring all of our games to all consoles, so we're not fucking around with that. And we wish we did better on Xbox. We actually annoyed the Xbox fan base by adding achievements. Did I tell you guys this? We added achievements to Hyroxia 2. So Hyroxia 2 has its 1,000 points or whatever, but we added achievements to it in a free update, and it annoyed the fuck out of people on Xbox because they were like, oh, we don't, because I guess so on PlayStation you earn a platinum, right, and then it's permanent, and then when trophies are added on or whatever, the percentage just becomes lower, but you always have the platinum trophy. I guess so that's like what you're going after on PlayStation. I guess the Xbox mantra for a lot of achievement hunters is having total like 1,000 points or total point filling. So we ruined that for them, and they were, and we learned an interesting thing that they were like, oh, because PSN profiles would praise us for adding trophies, and then you go to achievement, xboxachievements.org or whatever, and it would be like, oh, these guys are fucking mad that we added achievements. It's interesting.
Oh, because retroactively they can't get back if they already played the games.
Right, like they want completion percentage, I guess, as since they have no platform to get. And so we just learned something funny. We learned interesting things like doing our own stuff. Like we say about Twin Breaker all the time, like Twin Breaker was way harder than we thought it was. Like people were like, dude, some people were like, dude, are you serious with this game? And I'm like, what are you talking? But it's because we like played it for 6 months. I was like,
yeah, that's what happens
at Twin Breaker,
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, what are you guys talking about? It's not that hard, like grow up, and that's where the Hyroxia 2 complete customization of the difficulty came from, by just investing credits. Like you can make your ship so strong that the game is comically easy. It's a choice though. You don't have to do that, and you shouldn't, but you could. And that's where that came from. Is like we just went in the exact opposite direction. So like no one can ever because some people complain about Hyroxia 2 being hard, and then it's like, well, just grind for credits and buy ship upgrades, and you'll be fine. No problem.
Shout out to Barry from Lily Monk, cool dude.
Yeah, he's a great guy. Like I always tell people, none of this. I feel like I'm lucky to be involved in it in some sense. I'm not developing the games. I design some parts of the games. A lot of things happen because of me in the games, and obviously the story and the characters and all that kind of stuff come from me, which are not important. I mean, to the games we do. I just think it gives it kind of like a old Tecmo Ninja Gaiden feel or whatever, like where we have story there if you want it. And but he's doing all of the heavy lifting, and he's really an amazing dynamo. I mean, we have so many games like kind of half baking. We have on our Discord, we have a channel for each of the games we're working on, and he just dumps demos that run on Steam or just video and images all the time of all the different projects as he's working through them, because we're always waiting for art and different people to work on games in like a freelance capacity. So we have to constantly cycle through games, and we have all sorts of weird shit, like kind of just cooking that will probably not go anywhere. Like I really want to do a typing game very badly. I've said that in the past. Like I think that's an awesome mechanic that's underutilized. And I have the idea of like doing an RPG typing, like a typing JRPG where like to like fight or attack, it would be like, ATTACK. But if you like hit like ATTAK and enter, then like you would miss or whatever, or like lightning, LIGHTNIGN, or whatever it was, NING. Yeah. So yeah, we'll do. So we have like little things like that going, and we have like it's so fun to watch him work. That's the independent spirit too. And I just come in basically, and I'm like, this isn't right. We need this. So like the world map in Hyroxia 2 was my idea, like all sorts of different things like that. Obviously the beginning and the ending and all of the rest, but he's the one that's designing the stages and doing all the really heavy lifting. And
yeah, it's fun.
The design work is great, and he loves it. So I feel really lucky. And we own everything that we do, which is awesome. We actually had to go back and buy the rights to different ports that we had of games because they were done externally, so that we would own everything. And that might have been a money losing endeavor actually, but I just wanted to have all of our stuff, because we want to one day like release physical collections and stuff of all the games.
That's cool.
Salute.
So yeah, that's that. I'm sorry, I'm going on and on.
No, I'm good. I'm satiated. Unless anyone else had anything else to add. Got to get to learn about the habits.
Cool. Locke, let's go to you for your topic. We'll separate the games topics from each other. Although this is a very nerdy topic as well, so they're quite congruent in their own way.
Sure. Well, I was thinking about, we constantly hear on the news right now that the Russians are going to invade us, and that we're all going to hell, and it's happening pretty soon, and we got to prepare, and we're all going to die, and we maybe we should all join the military again. Maybe we should have like compulsory. What's that called in English? Like if you have to join the military at 18.
Yeah, it's compulsory. It's a draft. Yeah.
Yeah, like a draft. Maybe we should do that again. So people are really freaking out, and the media is really freaking us out. I hope that's not going to happen. But that got me to think, like, well, what if something like that would happen? And then that got me to think like, well, maybe it's not the Russians, but what if we take it one step further and like the apocalypse is happening and zombies are real and we're having like a zombie apocalypse. So that got me to think, well, I'm in a pretty good location for something like that because I live in an old church and I have big windows on every side. I have a 360 view of the entire little town I live in. There's a store right outside, so maybe I can make like some device and then just whole water and food and cigarettes in from the store. So I should be good for a while. But then I figured, well, maybe that's too easy. So what if everybody I knew turned in this building? Because I have neighbors, of course. So what if my neighbors already turned? What would I do? And I think because I live on the second floor and there's only one apartment next to me, I think if my neighbors would come here bashing the door down, I would make like a stick. I would put like a knife on a broomstick or something and then take them out and then use their bodies as like a barricade here in front of the door. And then I'm pretty much good because I don't think zombies can get up the stairs here. I have these, what's that called? Like the rotating
Spiral
stairs.
staircase.
Yeah, like a spiral staircase,
Oh,
which
okay.
seems really hard for like, well, not, I don't know. They're not real, of course, but it would seem hard to me for zombies to like figure out how that
Totally.
works. Yeah. So I think I'm in a really good spot where I am right now, but not many people are. I also don't live with anyone. So if my neighbors turn, I'll close the door. They're gone. Like, like it doesn't really matter. But that got me thinking about you guys too. So my question to you guys is, what would you do if you wake up tomorrow and you're in the room you're in right now? Let's say you all fell asleep in your podcasting room right now, and your girlfriend or your wife or your parents or whoever you live with turned into a zombie and they're bashing on the door. And let's say you've got 10 minutes before they bash the door down. What are you going to do? Where are you going to go? Are you like me? Are you going to stay in place? Are you going to go somewhere else? How are you going to get there? Are you going to survive? What do you think your survival chances are? So yeah, whoever wants to go first.
I'll start. So if I was in the room I'm in right now, Locke, I would need a weapon right away, something to defend myself. And I'm trying to think what I would have. And I think the best thing I have is like my base on my wall I could use to swing at some zombies or something like that. Because it's not a super heavy base, so I could use like a bat pretty easily. The garage is pretty close to me. I could like kick open my window. There's like a screen on it. I could just kick that off easily and get out if I need to. I am in a suburb though, so there are houses all around me, which is not good.
Yeah.
But I'm very close to a garage. I can get in my car easily, run over a bunch of zombies. Where would I go though right away, dude? I guess food would be the first thing I thought of.
Sure.
Going to fucking Ralph's, running over some people on the way there, stealing everything, I guess, dude. But then it's like, where do you go from there? Would people go to like City Hall or something like that? That seems like a death trap and everything.
You got
there's a high clock tower at mine. So
what? And you already the apocalypse already happened. Like you woke up and your family is already turned. So let's say it's already 12 hours into it. Like
That's
you're already pretty much.
Okay, so zombies are but there's gotta be like other survivors though too, right? Or is it just like me?
Of course, that's possible, but I don't think other survivors are going to help you. Like they want to survive themselves.
True. I don't have a gun, which is not good for this situation. I would go to the police station, get a gun or something.
Resident Evil 2 with it?
I have to, dude. I have to. Damn, I gotta strap up like Leon
and
get the. I gotta get the bulletproof vest on me. I don't know if the Walmart by me has guns. I don't know. Oh, dude, there's an Outdoor World I know of, kind of near me. Which is like a big like outdoor camping store. They got guns, they got tents, they got sleeping bags, they got supplies. I think I'd go there right away and stock up. Get a shotgun or something.
Do you think other people came up with that?
Yeah, I know, but it's like you got to beat them to it, Locke.
Well, you're 12 hours late. You're already into it.
Fuck, man.
Yeah, I mean, dude, that's the thing is like it would be interesting if you like this was all going down and you were near like a Dick's Sporting Goods or something. It's like, dude, just take all of the guns. Like I would take them all. I'd be like, well, we'll trade for whatever we need. I mean, like or like near a supermarket, just take as much food as possible and trade it for what you need.
Yeah, dude, I'll take my Switch. I'll take my Switch. I'll trade the Switch for some supplies later. Someone's gonna want the Switch, man. I got the case with all the games in it. They're gonna miss it, dude. Like, yo, I'll trade you Breath of the Wild for a loaf of bread or some shit. Because some dumbass is gonna have like a little kid that wants something.
Yeah, it might be valuable.
Exactly.
Like
that's what I'm saying,
or whatever,
man.
and then you can play Switch.
Think of like 10 years in the future. Think like I always think The Last of Us Part 2, Colin, where that girl's playing Vita,
right?
Or whatever.
Awesome. Yeah,
it's like
Miami.
That shit's gonna be valuable, especially because it's portable. I think about that.
All right.
But dude, I need a gun. I need something, man.
You should get a gun.
Yeah, it's like I would get a spear somewhere. Like, where the fuck can I get a spear or something like that? I don't know. I would go to City Hall, dude, because there's probably police officers there and they're on duty, I guess. I don't know. Or you're rolling the dice no matter where you go. Anywhere you go, you could just die. Could be some psychopath there taking advantage of the situation. Who knows? I'm going to City Hall. It's pretty close. Police station there. Hopefully get some help there. If not, dude, I'm going to Bass Pro Shop.
All right.
And rolling the dice, man. That's all I could do. I'm going to steal a new car, too. I'm going to find a big-ass car somewhere in the streets. A big truck so I can run over plenty of zombies if I need to.
Yeah, you probably go to a car dealer and have like your full run of whatever.
I'll go to the Tesla dealer near me. Just use a Cybertruck.
Oh, man, this is great.
But what would be the long-term plan, though? Because let's say you arrive at the police station. But
it's hard to say, Locke, because I would have to base everything that I do next off the current situation of what's going on.
Well, let's say, because again, you're 12 hours into it. So going to the police station, I was already making up in my head like, oh, Brett is dead. Like, you're not going to make it.
Why would I be dead already, though?
Because everything is turned. You're not going to get to the police station. There's zombies outside everywhere.
Well, if I'm using a car and driving through everything, I can drive to the police station pretty easy.
I guess.
It's not that far.
So you first have to kill, like, your parents and your girlfriend.
I wouldn't kill them. I'd just run away.
All right.
That's almost more cool.
I wouldn't, and if I did want to kill them, I would make sure if I get the chance to kill them, I'm going to survive. I'm not going to try to kill them with like a fucking shoe or something, you know, in a room. I'm going to make sure I have a gun and do it quick.
You definitely have to put your people out of their misery, I think.
Yeah, headshots only. I'll come back with that. But they can shamble around for a little bit. It's okay. It's not that big of a deal.
Cog, I want to hear yours. You're in more of an urban environment, which I think is going to be much worse than this situation.
It's awful for me. Yeah, it's awful.
It's over.
Bro, you got me thinking. So again, let's just take it face value, what Locke said. It happened. I'm in this room, in the podcast room. The thing that saves me off the top is whoever neighbor go act up.
Oh, shit.
They getting it. You getting this Jin Sakai right off the top. So you're gonna get.
How dull is that played though?
It's pretty dull, but it'll get a job. So we got that. So I know I will survive the initial neighbor, right? Because I live alone. Fire escape over there. So the immediate plan: phone, power supply. Obviously, any bit of sustenance I can grab quickly, duffel, book bag, fire escape, get to the car. That's the number one thing. I got to get to the car. Phone, obviously, I'm going to old school it actually, Carl. I'm going to actually, look on my old school AM and FM radio, Sirius radio. If there are any alerts, I know when you go through New York City, there's those, hey, you're going through the tunnel. We just want to give you an alert from the city or whatever. See if there's any signs of life. There's places to go. Surprisingly, I'm with Brad in the sense of I want to commandeer, but I'm a person that have lived through a blackout. What is it? Remember it was a great blackout in New York, maybe. I forgot.
Sorry, it was 2003, I want to say.
2003. So not that I have zombie training, but I remember how you realize when you have no power, like you couldn't get gas and stuff like that. So the only thing that would screw me is if those situations were commandeered, because the way I look at it is going to be anarchy, bro. There's going to be anarchy. Everybody's going to be at the supermarkets, the food places. I remember during those power outages, and people were looting and Rite Aids and pharmacies. And
yeah, we didn't have electricity for 3 days, I think, on Long
3
Island.
days.
Crazy.
Bro, it was pure anarchy. And then, you know, I guess the first other thing too is trying to siphon gas as much as I can. So that's the thing. Get in the car and then see immediate friends and family. If there's any survivors, a meeting place somewhere remote. For me, probably go to a little bit central Jersey if I can get there, if I can get out, if there's no barricades and stuff like that. But yeah, it'll be pretty desolate for me, Locke. Like in an urban environment with that amount of chaos and everyone has turned. And I will say this is probably not the most manly things. I would struggle killing like my mom or something. You know what I'm saying? Like,
of course.
I would struggle like that. Like, because there's going to be a part of me that even though common sense says you have to exit the city, and I probably will, but the curiosity of, okay, what's happening in the South Bronx? Who made it? And you always have that, I got to go back to my home, my old home. You know, like how, you know, just even if for a little bit you drive past or whatever, that kind of thing. So that might get me killed because I probably shouldn't go back. But yeah, that's pretty desolate. Long-term plan. You know, I got some friends in high places from a government standpoint. You know, what's the long-term plan? Yeah, what are countries doing? You know, in response, how are things in Europe? How are things transportation? Yeah, like I gotta try to see. You know, is London the place to go? Like I gotta see it. Then what's up with the airports? That's another thing. It'll be chaos in the city. Look, the reality is I'm most likely going to die a horrible death. But I am going to go out fighting. Just don't ask me to kill immediate family or friends. Like, that's the tough one. I can't. Yeah. I'm down to hit Colin because I'm like, if Micah turns, bro.
Well, what am I going to, like, I can either do the weird, I only watched a little bit of The Walking Dead, but that guy, like, keeps his daughter under the stairs or something like that. It's like, what? Like, I could do that. Or I can just run away. But like, I guess, yeah, I mean, who the fuck knows? I'm not a stone cold killer. I don't know that I could do any of these things. First of all, I'm not going to survive probably very long, but I would try, you know. I think I'm in a good place to do it. Everyone here is pretty much strapped. I mean, I also live in suburbia, like more rural suburbia. There's not that many of us in this part of the state compared to other parts of the state. And so I think I'd be okay. What I would do is bug in as much as possible. I mean, if I had a problem here where like family or neighbors were like zombified and then some of us were alive or whatever, I would try to, it's funny, man. I've actually thought about this from a fictional standpoint. I would never write something like this, so I don't care talking about it. But like our neighborhood's like a circle and there's like all these different circular like kind of neighborhoods connected with all these roads and rectangular and all these kinds of things. And it's like, we have a perimeter. And I've thought about it like because we walk around it basically when we go for our nightly walks. And it's like, you could imagine making this into a fortress. Like everything's kind of everyone's backs are facing each other. So you can have like this outward facing kind of situation, almost like an old fort with a stockade and stuff like that. It would be a really big stockade. But I've thought about that. And I'm like, so bugging, the so-called term of bugging in is what I would probably want to do. People are armed. We have, I don't have that much food, but we have more food than we need intentionally because I'm a little, you know, when you're right wing, like you're a little like kind of waiting for it all to pop off. Like everyone that's right wing is waiting for it to pop off, right? And that's like a joke amongst the right, you know, like you buy like your Patriot Pantry, fucking food for the nuclear apocalypse and shit like that. And that's stuff that we really do. And I don't have that stuff, but I just have a lot of like canned goods and rice and like water and whatever. And so just non-perishable goods. And so I think I'd be okay to like bug in for a while and just like take stock of the situation, hopefully with some neighbors that are still also amongst the living. And then maybe we are in a defensible place, or maybe they're like concentric circles. So like maybe it's like we just fall back to like the smallest circle and like try to hold that space and see what happens. Like I have solar panels, right? That generate more than enough electricity for the house. As long as like we're not using the pool filter or whatever, it's like totally fine. And so like we kind of have I'm not going to live either way. Probably someone's probably going to come steal my house. There's a joke. with that, and you guys probably see it like mega millionaire, billionaire people, they build their little compounds or their like getaway shelters and stuff. And then it's like, no, dude. And they hire like personal guards and stuff. And it's like, well, you just basically built that personal guards, like entire thing for his family. Like you're not going to,
yeah, you're done.
like if things really go off, you think this guy's going to like abandon his family and guard you? Or do you think he's going to bring his people here and kill you? I'll have like a good situation that will be almost completely indefensible from the people, like the road type people that are going to be out there. But yeah, and then we have to go, as has already been said, it's like situational. Like, what are we dealing with? And can we do anything about it? You know?
You're basically dealing with The Walking Dead because the zombies aren't that quick, right? Like in The Last of Us, I think everybody would be dead, of course, or Days Gone, like you have the fast freakers, like you can't escape those. But I think if you have like zombies from The Walking Dead who decompose if they don't eat people, like I think there is a way to get around that. I never got why they didn't get around it in The Walking Dead. It seems almost easy in there to survive if you don't have these asshole people everywhere.
I agree with you there. I recently, I've only gotten through the first 4 seasons, and then there's the prison season, I guess, which is pretty good. And then it's when everyone finds the prison, there's like new characters, and I'm like,
yeah,
I don't like they're not. I don't care about these people. I'm over this. But I got that far, and I agree with you. Like they kind of had figured they encountered a few places that were figuring it out. And The Last of Us is like that too, in the sense that where they are in Wyoming is pretty much fine. You're never going to get back to like true civilization for many generations, but you have like a place from which to build. What I never understood, and I think you might have brought it up, was the freakers in Days Gone, and obviously the infected in The Last of Us suffer from this too. But isn't there like and I guess it's supernatural in some way, but wouldn't there just be some sort of natural way that these things would die if they weren't satiated? Like eventually they would cut through all of the animals that were available. And if you just stayed away from them long enough, wouldn't they all just starve? Like, how are they operating? I know it's a TV show or a comic and it doesn't have to make sense, but I do think about it from that direction. It's like they have to have energy.
Right.
They have to have like some sort of like something keeping them going. It doesn't just work like that. It can't work like that, you know?
Don't they get slower if they don't eat people? They decompose and they get slower. I think that's the lore in The Walking Dead. I'm not entirely sure, but I think they get like slower and weaker and easier to kill if they don't have anyone. Because you see in the later seasons, they're not really a threat anymore. Well, they are still a threat. Of course. They're just walking slowly towards you, and then somebody gets bitten. Of course. How will you deal with other people though? Because I think that's the real danger. All these shows,
other people's a real danger.
Yeah,
we're at a huge advantage because we've played The Last of Us and we've seen The Walking Dead, and people in those shows and in those games haven't. So let's say you meet someone, Brad. Let's say you drive your car to the police station and there's 2 people there. How does that go? How do you interact with them? Are you suspicious of them? Of
course I'm suspicious of them. How could you not be right off the bat? 2 strangers right away, already suspicious. But a zombie apocalypse, very suspicious look, especially if there's firearms around. You're going to have some level of trust, though, no matter what, with anything, though. At some point, you're going to have to trust someone to some extent. So, like I said, it's a dice roll with all these situations. You better hope you just get good RNG with someone, or you're fucked.
Actually, RNG, or on the NPCs.
Yeah.
Extended friends and family of the living, right? Because what's end up going to happen is you're going to have to make, I don't want to say uncomfortable relationships, but maybe people that you were never close with that have survived and may have figured something out, and you guys are going to have to connect because society on some level is going to start over again. And to me, it's the nature of human beings in a lawless situation. That's the fear. Like it's hard to cope with. So, I mean, I feel I'm a good judge of character, but when people get desperate, you know, you could be on a chopping block for what you have, you know what I'm saying, kind of thing. So that's why I like shows like Walking Dead, because it shows you the breakdown of society and if this thing did happen, how people really convert. You know, and some people are not built for it. And I'm not going to sit there and say I'm definitely one of those guys that can be. We will see. I don't know how I would be in long term in that type of situation. It's a tough one.
It's funny
because it changes you. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh no, it's all good. I was just going to say it's funny because it's easy to think about when you're not in this situation, obviously. But I often think when I watch some of this post-apocalyptic stuff, especially things where there's no hope for anything, like more like nuclear holocaust stuff or whatever. The Road is a really great example, and the Road is one of my very favorite stories, and that deals with a lot of like existential stuff in the sense that there is no future, like it's over, and what are we even living for? Like, what's the point? And I wonder at what point people start to reach that point where they're like, I mean, you don't want to kill yourself. You're not going to like waste away or wither away, I guess. But it's like, you have to ask yourself, like, so like I live 5 more years, so that I just see 5 more years into the future of an Earth that is done or whatever. Yeah. The Walking Dead and The Last of Us seem like there's like hope. If you could just, it'll take like a few generations, and you're going to your population has been ravaged, which is probably great for the planet and great for your civilization actually. But you can like come back, as opposed to something like I'm playing Metro Exodus right now, which is the 3rd game in the Metro series. And like, that's a planet that's like completely fucked. Right. And it's cool to see like the difference between those things. I think a show I really liked back in the day was Jericho. Oh yeah. And because that dealt a lot with that. And I do wonder specifically about like how society holds on and how normal things are until they're not normal anymore. And I do wonder, in a real situation like a nuclear war, a really bad, like probably the thing that we would most likely deal with, which is like a really horrifying and unexpected natural phenomenon, like a major volcanic eruption or something that like puts the Earth in like nuclear style winter or whatever. Like those kinds of things are possible. And it's like, if that happened, I wonder how things would break down, and because it's not really if, but how it would happen and to what extent. Because I'd like to think it's not. I believe that humans are innately good. I think there are obviously bad people and bad situations, but I don't think that normal people are bad. I think that they get in those situations. I think they get eliminated quickly, and there's an imbalance or whatever. But if I like was neighborly with and I am neighborly with the people that live around me, and my neighbors and I are friendly with each other, but we're not like boys or anything like that. But it's like, if something went down, I feel like it would be more likely than not that we would try to rely on one another, just because I believe in that human nature. It's like, you're really going to, I don't know. It's like a very sociological thing, I guess. It's just, how would it all go down like that? I guess what I'm saying is that I'm not going to be part of the breakdown. I'm going to be a victim of it.
Right. No, fair enough.
How many people are not going to be parts of it, but are victims of it? You know.
Have you ever read the book Station 11 or heard about it?
No, I'll write it down here.
Or there's also an HBO show, which is magnificent. It's crazy because the book is basically about what happened to us with COVID, but it was written before COVID. So there's a flu epidemic that basically kills the whole planet except for a couple of thousand people. And the start of the book, and also the show, the HBO show, is basically the start of the epidemic. Like, a guy goes to the supermarket, another guy is at a play, and they just see people start dying. And then the news comes on, and then what we experienced during COVID, like there's go home, like stay indoors. But everybody slowly starts dying, except for a select few people, and they lock themselves in their apartments, and other ones do other stuff. And then we go 20 years into the future, and we see how society is slowly building up, slowly building itself up again. And the show and the book also inherently believe that people are good, which is really different than most other post-apocalyptic movies or shows or books, which is why it's such an interesting given. Because in Station 11, they have this traveling, it's not called the Traveling Symphony, it's called. And it's basically these actors we follow who go from city to city just performing. And of course, there's bad people, like in The Last of Us. Like, there's this group called the Red Bandanas that just kill people. But most of the show and most of the book and most of the music too, and everything in it, is about hope and about how people cope with the reality we almost lived in a couple of years ago. But the funny thing about that show especially is that they started filming it before COVID, a show about COVID. And COVID happened in the middle of it. And they had to cease production for like a while because what they were dealing with was actually happening, which is really...
Yeah, that's crazy. I wrote it down. I actually have HBO right now because I'm getting through Curb. And so nice. I'll have to watch that because there's a few other things I need to check out on there too. So that's good. I didn't even know. I never even heard of that. There's too many TV shows and movies too.
It's truly one of the most beautiful beautiful things I've ever seen. It was it's so because it's so different than The Last of Us and so different than The Walking Dead or any other post-apocalyptic or Fallout or anything else to do with post-apocalyptic scenery, because it gives you hope. It's a beautiful show. I would recommend it to everyone. But that delves into what you were talking about.
Yeah. It's I'm really attracted to the end of the world. I'm actually more attracted to the end of the United States specifically than I am to even the end of the world. Like, that's what makes Handmaid's Tale so compelling to me. And because it's about how the rest of the world is totally fine and we're completely fucking messed up, like, and fighting each other. And that's good shit. And I don't know. It's I don't want to live in a world, even in a dying or dire world, where like people are just gunning for each other. At that point, you have to just kind of embrace dying. It's kind of a sad thing to say. And obviously, when you're in that position, you don't want to die. You have a fucking evolutionary, deep inner brain evolutionary thing of not wanting to die and avoiding dying. That's obviously true, but I do wonder when you just let go. And I do think the imbalance. I think that there's a great imbalance in the real world of good people towards bad people. I think there's way more good people than there are bad people. I think in a situation where shit goes off, many of the bad people get into positions of power and survive because they're willing to do what's necessary. And then that throws the entire imbalance off, which in some way makes defending humanity much more important, because it's like the memory of what we actually were and not ceding it to people, which is also something The Road is about. So, yeah, this is a great topic. Anyone else have anything else to say about it, or do you want to go on, Locke? Do you want to pull up the next chapter?
I'm no, I'm satisfied. Yeah, cool answers.
Yeah, what do you think about those situations in Europe as opposed to the United States? Like, you guys have no weapons. It would be interesting. Like, even like your military obviously has guns. You have police stations that probably have weapons, but you just don't have the volume of weapons. Like, they just don't exist in your situation, which makes it safer. But for those that are willing to do what's necessary, like to take a police station or to like go to a NATO installation or something and get the guns, you can have like a warlord, like a European warlord, basically, because there's no weapons, there's no way to fight back. You know, that
happens all the time in like old Balkan countries. Look at the what's the guy called? Ramadan Razaman,
Milosevic.
Of course, Milosevic in Bosnia a couple of years ago, but right now, like the Chechen leader, what's his name?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I'll look it up. I'm sorry.
Like a crazy guy who is basically like a warlord, and runs his country that way. And
Ramzan Kadyrov.
That's him. That's him. Yeah.
Well, yeah. You're like, yeah, dude, not the dude from 25 years ago. Very American answer, though. Got to give it to me.
Oh, him too. That's a great example too. What happened in Bosnia is awful, of course. But yeah, same with the Chechens and the Russians right now. Like, all those countries are at such. Like, it's happening. Like, everyone here can feel it. I can feel it too. Like, it's going down, and it's going down right now. And everyone knows it's coming, but nobody really cares. Like, everyone is like, oh yeah, well, that's just the way it goes. We live here.
Let's linger on that. First of all, I have a Wikipedia of this guy. You guys should just look at what I've seen this guy before. This guy looks like a cartoon character. It's amazing.
He does. Wow.
Yeah, he's like a GTA villain.
Yeah, he does. He does look like a GTA villain. And so shout out to him. I've definitely seen him before. Well, I don't really pay attention to what's.
Don't give it a shout.
Shout out to Ramzan Kadyrov. Yeah, I don't follow anything that's going on in Chechnya, so I have no idea what's going on over there, to be honest with you. What's the vibe though in Europe? Because it's so interesting you say that. I think a lot of Americans think it's like you're so much closer in proximity to it. We look at it as like total alarmism. A lot of us, where it's like. You think the Russians are really going to roll into NATO countries? Like, it's impossible, you know? Like,
no, I don't think the Russians are going to, but someone at some point will. It's only been 60 years, and the exact same stuff that happened 60 or 70 years ago is happening again. You can see it in every country. You can see it in my country. We just had elections last week or 2 weeks ago. It wasn't as bad as people thought it was going to be. But the far right is winning pretty quickly. Which is bad, but the far left is just as bad here. Like, they're both like crazy groups with a lot of extremism on both sides, and both sides want to kill a certain group. Like, right now here, the far left is very anti-Jew for some reason, which is really weird to me, or really weird to a lot of people living here. Maybe it's the same in America. And the far right is really anti-Muslim. So that those two sides are really ramping up here, which is scary and annoying. And the Russians, our NATO generals blatantly say all the time, they just released another statement, I think a week ago or 2 weeks ago, like, if it goes down, we're done. Because we have nothing to defend ourselves with. We don't have weapons. We don't have the people. We don't have the infrastructure. We just don't have anything. We've gotten so lazy over the last 70 years, while other nations have been building up, like Russia has been building up for this. And is still building up for this. That's why I don't think anything is going to happen right now, but at some point.
When you say we, do you mean Belgium or NATO?
I mean NATO.
Yeah.
NATO. Because Belgium, I mean, what is Belgium going to do? We're going to give people beer and fries and
Hey, yo.
Waffles.
You're getting the waffles, man?
Waffles, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. This is a whole other topic. Like, I feel like NATO should be dissolved in some sense, and like Europe needs to like learn to figure itself out, because I think that your position of weakness comes from relying on an outside partner too much and not relying on yourselves. And so like when the outside partner gets disinterested, which is what's happening, and like the engagement isn't there anymore, like you can no longer rely on yourselves. Like, I'm surprised. I guess what I'm saying is I understand why Europeans want us there, and I'm friendly. I have a very friendly disposition, even though we make fun of Europe. I have a very friendly disposition towards Europe. I think our societies are basically the same society across Atlantic. Same with Canada and other, and Australia, the English speaking countries, and kind of the Western European, Western Enlightenment era colonial derived countries, right? And so I understand why we should all be together, but I think that like unintentionally Europe has left themselves really vulnerable, because like we can barely take care of ourselves. And what ends up happening in that situation is we start being like, well, we gotta come back home now. And that's what scares me. It's not so much like Russia rolling into NATO countries. It's more like, can people really defend themselves without us? And what does that mean for us? And why do we have to get sucked into this shit over and over again? It kind of sucks.
Look at the amount of American companies that are moving into the Ukraine right now. I know of 2 big American companies that are right now moving most of their people, or not moving, firing most of their people and hiring most new people in the Ukraine, because it's profitable for them. It's cheap. It's easy. So that also always gets me to think like, well, they must know something that we don't, that it's not as bad as it seems, or as they make it seem. Because why else would a company do that? I know maybe I shouldn't say it, but like Nestle, I know people at Nestle who are like firing a lot of divisions in Europe and in America, and are just moving everything to the Ukraine right now.
The cynic in me says that like that was always the intention, was like to destroy to have a place destroyed and then let your corporate infrastructure come in and help it out. I mean, the Marshall Plan after World War II was hugely beneficial to Europe, but it was hugely beneficial to us too. Because we had control. And I'm a very cynic American. Like, I don't really trust or believe our government. And
BlackRock.
Yeah, and like I don't think we get involved in things for the right reasons. Like, I don't think we're involved in Ukraine for the right reason. We're not involved in Ukraine because we care about Ukrainians. In fact, we clearly don't care about them. We're willing to put them into the meat grinder, an entire generation of them, in order to kill Russians on our behalf, basically. And it's like,
sad.
I don't know, man. It's a tough situation. I do know America is not what it once was, and that we can't throw our weight around anymore. So we better hope that things don't go off. And if they go off, we will. If they go off in Taiwan, for instance, Europe is on it. It's totally going to be on its own. And that's when I think things get maybe dangerous. Maybe that's when Russia goes like, But I'm a believer that Putin's a rational actor and doesn't want to do that.
I hope so too. Yeah.
But that's a totally different topic. I don't want to get bogged down and annoy people.
Europe has no cohesion. That's the big problem here. Like if you look at the United States, the word says it, like United States of America. We don't have that here. Like we don't care what Germany does. Like our leaders do, but the people don't. Like we don't talk to them. We don't know them. I have no idea what the German government looks like even. So there's no cohesion from the populace here. While in America, you all know, or at least I guess most of your people know the structure, or know their neighbors, or know the other states, and see them as the same thing. And that doesn't happen here. So that's what makes it dangerous, I think. And that's also what happened with the Germans 70, 80 years ago. Like a lot of people, you don't hear these stories in the US, I think, but a lot of people here were pro-Germany during the war. because they were our neighbors. Like we knew them. So a lot of people right now, it's cool like to say like, oh, my grandparents were in the resistance. I don't know what my grandparents did or if they were the resistance or not, but I do know that there were entire villages aligning themselves with the Germans. So if the Russians come in here, I can see that happening again. Like you don't know what your neighbors like. My neighbors used to be Ukrainian, and they had the entire basement filled with like water and like food because they were convinced that Putin was going to invade here too. Which 2 years ago, 3 years ago, that's not going to happen, I think. But like the countries here don't have the cohesion you guys have, and that's why we look at you as like an example. Like, please come save us, or how do we be like you? How do we be more like you? I think that's a big problem here now.
It's funny because like the shitty thing is, from my perspective, is that I would remove us from entangling alliances, and yet if Europe really was under attack again, we would obviously get involved. And I think a lot of people would be like, that's kind of what's necessary. I think the bigger shit that's going to hit the fan is if things go off in Taiwan, which is likely. And I don't feel like we should be involved in that, which it's going to be because I don't think we win, to be perfectly honest with you. Like, I don't think we're too far away. We get Japan and South Korea in the line of fire. Everything's going to get all fucked up over there.
How do you even win something like that? Like, there is no winning.
I guess it's the porcupine strategy, right? Like, that's their whole thing is like, we've armed Taiwan so much. Like, there are so many weapons. Taiwan is the most armed place on the entire planet. And we've given them so much ordnance. And I think instructions to basically destroy the entire infrastructure if it's going to get taken, to make it so Pyrrhic, because obviously that's where like a lot of silicon manufacture is going on. I have no idea why we decided as a global economy, that's where we're going to manufacture all of this shit. But that's why we're building all that shit in Arizona, but it's going to take a few years to get off the ground. And once that gets off the ground, what happens to Taiwan is not really relevant to us from an economic perspective anymore. But people have to know that the interesting thing is, and you guys probably know this, is that it's like Formosa, like Taiwan is the remnants of the original China or the prior Chinese government that was there before the communists took over and they fled. And that's the place that they've been holding. So there's this idea that they are the real Chinese government, but it's clearly not true. And whether or not we want it to be, it would be nice, but it's not true. And are we really going to fight communist China over an island in the Pacific? I don't feel like people are going to send their sons over to that war in the United States. Like, I think we're in a position where it's like, there's just not going to be the necessary people to do it. People are going to be like, no, like, I'm not doing it. I'm not fighting. Like, look at all the shit we've gotten involved in, and we can't even win any wars. Nonetheless, getting involved in another one, I don't know. It's a bummer, but we'll find ourselves right back in the same situation for a third time in Europe.
Yeah. Well, hopefully not. Hopefully, you never know. Maybe we did learn something and it doesn't happen anymore.
I must say, Locke, from my perspective, that I don't think that I think the only other place, and it's like only other place in quotes, that Russia would go is Moldova. And if they can wrap around Ukraine and basically get in there, because that place is totally Russian aligned. But other than that, it's like, I really don't think they have designs on anything else, because I think they think it's suicidal. And it is. I mean, like,
that is true. Yeah. Well,
it would be really interesting, though, if they decided to do it at the same time China went after Taiwan, and that they coordinated on that, because if they do, then it's going to force the United States to make a choice. And one of them is going down, So,
of course,
yeah.
Well, there's also a lot of countries like Latvia who did what they used to be Russian, like, and they don't want them to join the NATO, of course, which I don't get. But you from their perspective, that's like an act of war, of course. So the Ukraine asking to join NATO, I think they did, or did they asked to join something, I guess, recently.
Yeah, Ukraine wants to join NATO, but can't until the war's over. Like the documents don't allow, and like the rules don't allow them to join while they're at war.
Yeah. So to them, that's like an act of war already. So it's not. Yeah, it's very difficult. It's also different. It's a completely different culture. Like, Russian culture is not like Western culture. They don't think like us. They don't. Well, they do act like us, but they're very chauvinistic. Most Russians are.
I also think they have a certain interpretation of European history that's in some way accurate, but like, they look at themselves as like, well, we've been attacked many times.
Yeah.
And that's true. But they've also done the attacking, which is like Poland is a great example. When it's like the Nazis went into Poland, it's like, no. The Nazis and the Soviets both went into Poland. They agreed with each other to go into Poland and they split it up. So that's not what happened. And so there's that's what's so amazing about history is just the interpretation of it. And, Europe is like so alive. That's what I'll say is like, it feels so alive in terms of being like a center of insanity for many hundreds of years. Like there's something very gravitational about Europe where it all kind of emanates from there still to this day. And a lot of people in the United States really reject that and resent it. But to me, I'm like, it's just kind of a natural fact. But, dude, my whole disposition, I'm insane, but like, what if we just had a totally peaceful disposition? I feel this way in Israel too, where it's like fighting and having this agitation is only going to get us so far. So like someone's got to make a radical peace move. It's not a plan or like a suggestion, but just make a move. And like what I would do is just huge land swaps in Palestine and in Israel, where it's like, all right, if Palestine needs to be one country, it can't be a country separated into two pieces, which is what it is right now. Right. So Israel will take Gaza and they'll in return swap a bunch of land in the North Mediterranean in their land and bring it all the way into the West Bank and like give you that. And then you'll have a piece of the Mediterranean. You can have all of that and two countries. It's like just someone make a radical move. And I feel, and honestly, in Europe, it's like dissolve NATO. Why does it exist? Like the Soviet Union doesn't exist anymore. We won. NATO won,
But the Soviet Union does exist, and NATO exists to stop the Soviet Union right now. If NATO didn't exist right now, we would be fucked right now.
But I don't know. We should save this almost for another topic, but it's like, in my opinion, it's like, why can't we have a posture? Maybe it's too late to do that now, actually, like what I'm saying, Locke, but like it should have been done in 1991 when it's been like the Warsaw Pact is over. True. You lost. You're in the shit. We don't need this alliance anymore. We won. We won so bad that like we're dissolving the alliance. We literally won so badly. We don't need you anymore. And then everyone can make their choices. It should be up to the countries whether they're in what orbits they're in. But I feel like NATO is actually NATO's expansion towards Russia is an act of aggression. Like I don't think what Russia did in Ukraine is right. I don't support it. I want Ukraine to win, although I don't think they're going to. And all of the rest, it's a matter of involvement and all of those things. But there's no doubt that like NATO acted in a provocative way. There's no doubt that the United States toppled the previous Ukrainian government and that the previous Ukrainian government was neutral and that all it takes is to make a buffer with like, Belarus and Ukraine and all of the rest. And then everyone's going to be fine. It's just like,
true.
It's just not, to me, it's not as one-sided as it's made out to be. And I think that's
of course
fairly obvious. I don't have a friendly disposition towards the Russian government, but I don't want to be like, I feel like all it's going to take is for Putin to be deposed or to die for Russia to be normalized again. And like, I don't want to have this like fucking generational beef with this country when we already beat them. They lost already. And maybe we should like let them off the mat in some sense, or should have. Maybe we can't now because we're in the situation we're in now, Anyway.
Maybe it will work out. Like maybe we never know. We never know. Maybe
no, you don't. I mean, I doubt it. I don't know what's going to happen, but we should, when you're back on, we should have that as a conversation, talk about that more. Cool. That's a good,
let's do that.
That's a good talk. Cause I'm all about like just radical peace moves at this point. If the radical peace move blows up in your face, then no one can say that like you didn't try. I feel that way, especially with the Israeli-Palestinian situation, where it's like, if you try to do like a really radical thing, like land swapping and getting the country into one cohesive unit and then allowing them to kind of thrive under their own circumstances, and then they still attack you like they did on October 6th, then no one's going to blame you for going in and doing what you got to do, I guess. So I think you got to put those overtly peaceful overtures on the table and see what happens. And I feel like people have this disposition towards like just war and chaos. It's fucking weird. All right. Final topic. Brad, back to the games.
Mm-hmm.
Let's hear your topic and let's get into it.
Yeah, my topic is DLC, a huge part of the gaming industry that has grown over the last 20 years. It seems like particularly. And I'm just thinking about like, where it kind of started from. Where were the origins of DLC? What are the grueling examples of DLC that stick out in your mind, for better or for worse? You know, I think of the horse armor. Was it from Oblivion, or I believe it was
Yeah, it was
that
Oblivion.
was like a huge moment in time, like paid DLC for cosmetics and stuff like that. And I'm just curious, like, what's the best DLC, do you guys think? Has it been beneficial to the gaming industry as a whole, do you think? Colin, I want to start with you on
Okay.
DLC.
Yeah, so I guess DLC's origins literally are with PC expansions that you would buy physically.
Yeah,
In the
I think
90s?
like Atari had stuff you could download. Let me
Yeah,
look
like,
at
well,
this.
Atari had they had their primitive like phone line connectivity to the 2600 and the
and like the
5200.
Sega Channel
And
kind
then
of stuff
Sega
like
Channel,
that. I
right.
don't know if that'd
Yep, I
be
remember that.
technically DLC, but
Yeah,
like,
it's not really like I would look at like DLC as we know it
yeah,
with Dreamcast. It started in the console space and then into PlayStation 2, then to Xbox and so on. Because I think like DCO must have had, or I'm sorry, Phantasy Star Online must have
Star
had
Online. Yeah.
DLC, and then what else would have? Oh, Halo 2 had DLC for sure on the original Xbox. So that stuff started happening really in that kind of turn of the century moment, and then it got into kind of downloadable games. So like it was, people might remember Xbox Live started on a disc. Like you could, a disc went out with downloadable games that you would have to use the disc to buy the game, and then I think the game ran. I think that maybe you had access to downloading the game digitally. I don't really know exactly how it worked, but that's how it began. And so I think the question, the operable question you asked is like, has it been good for the industry? And the answer is like, definitely, just because you can see in the numbers how much money people are spending generation over generation while buying a stagnant amount of games. They're spending more money, which means they're spending it on expansions, DLC, subscriptions, and all the rest. And Sony has reported those numbers pretty openly, that people are spending exorbitant amounts of money on expansions. I think it's up like hundreds of percent generation over generation. So it's doing well, but my own interaction with it is fairly minimal. I'll buy expansions or DLC once in a while. Like I just was saying on Sacred, I bought the some of the expansions for Power Wash Simulator just because I really like that game, and I like Future Lab, and so I wanted to give them a little money. I got the game for free on PS Plus, or as part of my subscription, so I don't mind doing that, throwing a little bit of money here and there. But the problem with me in DLC though is that it's a timing situation where if I'm not playing a game late, so like I'm playing Metro Exodus now, and that game has a few expansions, and I'm going to play them all because if I like the game, I guess, and I do, because they're all there. But if I get through a game and then an expansion comes later, like what happened with Final Fantasy 16, it's like, I don't know, I'm not playing that stuff. Like I'm DLC's timing is too distant from when the game comes out often to keep me involved. It's so, Erdtree is so interesting. I'm not an Elden Ring fan, but it's like, damn, dude, don't you have to get good again? Like you can't just jump in. You have to be in the mode of playing the game. And I'm not a sophisticated enough gamer to just be able to jump around from game to game to game, like sight unseen, after having not played it, kind of in the operable mode of having played one or two other games more recently that I'm used to, and then having to learn the game again. That's the problem with me in DLC. So between expansions and games just running better over time and getting patched, like I'm becoming much more comfortable waiting, sometimes years, to play a game. And then you kind of get the complete experience all at once, as opposed to having to jump back in. When I replayed Spider-Man and Spider-Man Miles Morales for in preparation for Spider-Man 2 last fall, I had never played the Spider-Man DLC because it came so late. And it wasn't even that late. It was like 2 months after the game came out. But at that point I was out. So I had experienced it only for the first time many years after it came out.
Let me ask you this, though. Let's say Last of Us 3 comes out, part 3. We know there's going to be DLC a year later. Are you going to wait the whole time, or are you going to play the game when it comes out?
No, if I, that's the thing, is if I care deeply about a game or I'm really interested in it, I'll just pull the cord now and just do it. The Last of Us obviously is like a minute one game for me when that comes out. But there are games that I see more and more where I'm like, I can wait for that. It happens more often than not, actually. Not only because of the condition that they're often in at launch, but because, they're going to get new trophies, new features, new game plus. I mean, that's a really big thing for me. If I'm going to play a game immediately afterwards, it would be cool if the new game plus functionality wasn't a piece of free DLC or maybe even part of the season pass or something. I think that some of the stuff's getting split up beyond comprehension in some way, like split off from the game. Remember when Chrono Trigger just came with a new game plus and how like unique that was? And slowly it became this rule for replayable games. And then they started splitting it back off again to have like this marketing beat to get you to talk about the game or download it again and get it on your console. I'm frustrated by the optics of it just because I think it's annoying, but I have no problem with expansions being made and people buying them. People just have to understand a few things, is that the value proposition on expansions is really bad compared to the core game always. And that many studios wouldn't really be alive without a robust post-game launch plan, because they need that extra those extra funds that far outstrip the cost of making the content, which the game often is not made like that. So yeah, that's it.
I'm just curious. This doesn't have to do with the topic, but with Last of Us, you said you would play the DLC later when it comes out, which is I totally get. Final Fantasy 16 was your game of the year last year, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So how come you don't want to play the DLC if you loved it so much?
I guess part of the reason that I don't want to play or I'm not interested in the DLC is that I don't really need any more Final Fantasy 16.
Okay.
But the other reason is that I think that Final Fantasy 16 is a substantially more sophisticated game than The Last of Us. Like, I know how to pick up a play in third person.
Oh, you mean
computer.
mechanically?
Yeah, like
okay.
The Last of Us there's nothing to it really. Like, you're gonna obviously have to get to the way it feels and maybe mess with the velocities and all the rest, and the settings, but you know how to play The Last of Us pretty quickly. You don't know how to play Final Fantasy 16 right away. At least I don't, and I wouldn't be able to play at that end game level either. That's a big problem for me. You know, if I walk away from a game for too long and want to go back and play it, I almost always restart it. Because I'm like, I'm just not where I need to be. I just couldn't imagine. I did that with Octopath Traveler 2. I recently deleted the save off my console because I was like 25 hours into it, and then I just stopped playing it. And I'm like, I can't get back in it. Like, I have no idea what the fuck is even going on. Like, it's just a useless thing to have on my console. You know, like, why even bother? If I ever get back to this game, I'm going to start again. So that's just the way I play. But I'm not going to avoid the games that I really, really want to play. And The Last of Us would be one of those games. But I must admit, there are not that many of those games anymore.
Right.
They just... it's more likely for me to get surprised by a game that I end up playing immediately, that like I didn't realize this existed and I want to play it, as opposed to planning a release schedule. Like, when I look at the upcoming games list, I'm like, there's only a few things on here I really truly care about, you know. But there's going to be much more than that that's actually good. I just have to kind of find it. Let
me ask you two questions. Your favorite DLC ever, most infamous DLC in your mind, or one that stands out in your mind as an iconic moment.
Yeah, infamous DLC. That's a good question. Oh, so
it could be something really small, like the horse armor. It doesn't have to be.
The horse armor is funny just because that people freaked out about that, and that is so quaint compared to what is going on today that it's not even funny. Both from what it is and how much it costs. Like, it's a famous moment on Sacred Symbols when I like had a meltdown because I didn't realize what people were actually paying for Fortnite skins. Like, in my mind, I'm like, Fortnite skins are $1. Like, that's literally what I was thinking. Like, a Fortnite skin is $2.
No.
And people are like, no, Fortnite skins are like $20. It's like, what?
Yeah.
And then I was like, the horse armor was like nothing. And it's so funny how times have changed.
It was like a couple bucks, right?
Yeah, I think it was like $2.99 or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's just that the times are different. So yeah, expansions and DLC that are somewhat meaningful. I think of Burial at Sea, BioShock Infinite DLC, which is vital to wrapping up, kind of connecting the first game to Infinite. If you're a BioShock fan, you should absolutely play that. It's fucking dope. I really liked. It's funny you brought up the word infamous, just because when I think of expansions, I think First Light, which was the expansion to Second Son that came out 2015 or 2016. That was a really, really well done expansion. Perfect kind of length, getting you back into the mechanical drive of a game like Infamous, starting from the beginning. And I prefer those one-off robust expansions. Like, just do one thing. If you're going to go back, just do one thing. And as opposed to like what Spider-Man did in 2018 with the 3 little pieces, it's like, come on, guys. I don't want to play 2 hours of Spider-Man a month. This is not the way you play Spider-Man. So like, give me more of that. So I think of that. And then I think about a lot of the expansions with Mass Effect, which I thought were pretty good, specifically with Mass Effect 2.
Oh, don't steal it. Don't steal it.
Yeah. No, I won't say anymore. I'm not going to say anymore.
Now. I did a showcase for you on this.
I'm not
presented for this.
But I don't. No, it's all good. I was going to say, like, typically I don't really play expansions though. Like I just kind of just don't get to them because they're just it's too little too late, even for a game I enjoyed or whatever. So yeah, I don't interact. I spend way more money on new games than I do DLC and expansions, but the opposite is actually true now for the per capita PlayStation gamer. So times have changed.
I just want to quickly bring this up too, is we live in an age of gacha games and like stuff like that, spending lots of money on games for virtual waifus these people drop so much cash for. I think of a recent example of an outrageous DLC is that Riot for League of Legends had a $500 skin for one character. $500, and it cost some ripples. And I think, like you guys are saying, I think DLC is ultimately a good thing, but you still get those stinky sons of bitches throwing in gross shit like that.
It's cool to give people options. Like if someone wants to buy something like that, you're dumb, but that's totally fine.
I don't think that is a cool option. I think that's just a fucking stupid thing that you shouldn't even give people that option. You shouldn't even give them that. You shouldn't give people an option to buy a $10,000 skin either. It's fucking insane.
Well, I
don't need to do
I
that.
wouldn't give people that option personally, but I don't want to regulate the market too much. It's like you should have a I guess what I'm saying is something like that should be so deleterious to your persona in the games industry and the way people perceive you that you would never dare do it. But the reality is that they do it because they not only get away with it, but probably make a lot of money.
It works. People buy it. That's
so
why.
it's like at some point you're getting in the way of a company, and a consumer having a voluntary monetary relationship with each other. And it's like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's regulations on stuff already with corporations and stuff, what they can do and sell to certain ages and stuff like that. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if this shit gets even crazier. Like, remember loot boxes, all that stuff, like governments getting involved in all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's big. I remember that.
Yeah, that's
so
different.
You're going to see more of that stuff happening.
When you're getting into like more microtransaction-y, gotcha.
That's DLC.
Stuff, I think that's like where you get into gambling, and that's like a totally different thing. Like, I don't even interact with games on that level almost ever, even on principle. That's why I stopped playing Plants vs. Zombies 2 back in the day, because I'm like, why can't you just let me buy the game? I'm not going to like buy it a little bit at a time. If you're not going to let me fucking play this game without nickel and diming me, I'm just not playing it. So that kind of stuff turns me off generally, but consenting adult, knowing what he's doing, giving the $500 to Riot is an embarrassment to everyone involved. Nonetheless, it's like that game Star Citizen.
Yeah.
That's raised like $500 million at this point.
Dude,
or something like
so
that.
So much money, man.
Like it's so it's a real regulatory body in the United States would be like, what is actually going on over here? But it seems like everyone's just fine. And so it's like, okay, if you know, as long as you know what you're getting yourself into, I'd rather draw the parameters really wide than like try to tighten them in on anyone. So it's not up to me. Did you see the video that's going around recently of a guy on a craps table in Vegas? After he was like on the table, he lost his life savings, and like spread out and like had a nervous breakdown on the craps table, and it's like he was literally shaking, because like he lost all of his money, and it's like, dude, you know what you were doing? Like that, it sucks. I feel bad for you, but these guys took you for a ride. That's their job, and if you have to know, it's not my job to protect you from them, and. I feel that way about this in some sense too. You should just know better. Like I said, it should the reputational damage of having the audacity of charging someone $500 for something in a video game should be so bad. That you wouldn't do it, but it's not the case,
Yeah, I guess I agree with you. I wish people wouldn't tolerate that. It's like a totally different culture thing though in other countries, like in China and Korea. It's like bragging rights that you can spend that much money. It's like classism almost. So that's why it's really popular over there. A lot of those games are. It's a fascinating thing with plus and negatives.
Yeah, well, it's like buying a nice bottle of wine at a restaurant or something, though. It's just like, okay, that's very impressive, and you can sniff the fucking cork and like swish it in your mouth and all that. But that's cool.
Cog, let's talk to you about DLC, man. How you feeling about it? Let's start with your favorite DLC, because you were ready to talk about it. You were ready. You didn't want Colin to steal it.
I was ready. Obviously, Colin knows Mass Effect 2. I voted as one of the greatest games of all time. Did my little presentation on it at the LSM event, And yeah, one of the things that for the greatest DLC for me was that the story of Liara Tassoni was a story for Mass Effect 1 that it really resonated with me, and the relationship that I had with the character. And she really wasn't present in 2. It was very cold, very minor appearance, and and it left fans with, okay, we understand the direction you guys are going with Shepard and the story and the Reapers and all this other stuff, but it left fans wondering, like, what was she doing? What was going on during this period? So there was the layer of the Shadow Broker. She became this completely different character, completely transformed. She got a little cold, she got calculating, but she still had love for the Shepard character based on the extent of it was also based on your relationship with the past game, which to me was such an amazing thing that Mass Effect did. They had all these story threads that, let's be honest, a strong percentage of the population didn't even know or existed and could happen. But the fact that they wrote that in, I thought that was cool. And those choices even translated into this bespoke DLC, right? So amazing stuff. I was blown away with such a great job they did. And it was a full circle moment. They've had other ones. They had one in part 1 called Bring Down the Sky, which was a race called the Batarians that didn't get a lot of love. We knew they existed because one thing about the Mass Effect universe, they had all these great lore about all the different races. The Asari lived for this long a period of time, but the Batarians were like, why are they so violent? And why we don't get a lot of them. So it was just a great universe building thing. So I would think about that. As far as DLC as a whole, I'm probably guilty. I'm probably very guilty of if I love a game.
Oh, we're all guilty of something, but it's like not even guilty. We all invest in things that most people probably wouldn't because we enjoy it.
If I love that universe, if I love that game, I do want to pay more. I say pay more, but continue to live in it. I think of Bethesda games. I think that's where me and Maddie really connect. And I'm from the era of the the Oblivions and getting all the different DLCs for the Skyrim, and because I consider they're single player games, but I almost consider them live service games in a way that you can continue to live and create your own adventures and these storylines that continue. So. Yeah, I think if I'm in love with the universe, I will definitely do it. But I do agree with Colin in the sense that there's sometimes I feel I'm the beneficiary of missing out in the zeitgeist for certain games, right? And then if you miss out, then when you finally, and let's say they add something or there's that deluxe edition that is now resurfaced in preparation for a sequel, and you're like, you know what, man, I never played such and such. And I think a game, Disco Elysium was one. There was a lot of games where I'm like, man, I'm getting the full complete experience. And now they remastered this bad boy and I'm getting things you didn't even get. So there's a part of me where I feel like I'm the beneficiary for waiting and not jumping the gun on you piecemealing me every 5 minutes, right? So I think there's a benefit there. As far as your egregious things, I would say, the horse armor was crazy. I mean, if we look at it now, it's probably nothing.
I think it was like $2.50 or something like that, or $3.
I remember loving that game so much, and I'm like, oh, what else are they giving me? It's just the armor for my horse. That's what I'm saying? That kind of thing. I'm a Destiny guy. They've had some egregious things sometimes. I think the Curse of Osiris was definitely one that was not good. But Witch Queen in Final Shape, which I'm enjoying right now, is probably, A+ Bungie. I don't know if it's going to be enough to save them from their board getting taken over, but from critical acclaim, they've really ended a 10-year plus saga, I think, in an amazing way. I think the last thing I was going to say is that, to me, the argument is more DLC versus microtransaction. And microtransactions, for me, man, this is why I think me and you align, Brad. It could get really slimy. I'm a sports guy. I came from the Madden era, and I went to the NBA 2K era. And I don't know about y'all. I'm going to tell y'all something. I'm going to give y'all some NBA 2K hood knowledge. I got friends that every time the new NBA 2K comes out, they will buy the $100 Super Deluxe Kobe Jordan edition, right? And then they set another $100 for VC. And this is for this create a player, compete against other people in the park mode. And the game purposely throttles you so bad with basic skills and basic layup package and basic things. And you will get beat by people who have clearly spent money to upgrade their character to godlike levels, right? And these things called badges. If you do things in the game based on reputation, you get, okay, I'm a defensive player. I'm good at blocking shots. I'm more apt to stealing. So instead of sometimes putting in the work for these things, they are outright buying the skills and compete. And 2K fosters this thing crazy. So I remember one year I got into it and I realized the pressure. I'm like, man, I'm not holding my weight for my team and my guys. We're going to the park. I'm like, all right, all right, I'll pay a little bit more from a jump shot. And bro, it gets down this slippery slope. I can't do this anymore. I was like, you had 1 year with me, NBA 2K. Never again am I doing this mode, because it's every year these dudes do this. And they got mad at me, God, you don't play the park anymore. No, I am not spending $200 to compete with y'all just so I don't get laughed at, or I don't have the fit. That's the other thing. Oh, how you look on the court. They've got State Farms in there. They got all types of stuff. You literally are paying for the new Air Jordans and the new Penny Hardaway sneakers and in the game. I'm like, this is okay. I'm good, 2K. I'm comfortable. But yeah, that would be my thing. This the DLC, the microtransaction, the constant nickeling. Sometimes it's like, all right, bro, this is too much. So that's where I'm at right now.
Unbalancing the game too, right? Like that's the big problem. Is like, why would you want to make a game that can be imbalanced? Like, you want to make a game that's unbalanced so people spend money, obviously, but that again should be a reputation ruining move. Like, that's what's so good about Helldivers 2 to a lot of people, I think, is that like it's not really possible to make yourself that much stronger by spending money, like everyone's kind of even. And also, like, you're on a team, you're not fighting each other. That's what bothers me about that shit. It's, again, not that people will spend all this money on EA FC or whatever in their ultimate team and all that kind of stuff. It's like, cool, if that's what makes you happy, do it. It just sucks if that unbalances the game for someone else that's decided not to, do that. And you got to figure out a way to like thread that needle, in my opinion. Yeah.
The pay to win it's slippery. Yeah.
Cog, it's really funny you're talking about people getting their characters in different clothes and stuff and like that. It's like, I wish I fucking spent that much money on themselves in real life. It's a lot of those idiots looking sloppy.
Some people ain't got no business spending.
Yeah, have some self-respect. They're worried about their avatar more than themselves, dude.
Yeah, they're ready getting paid, but you got to do. Let me stop.
Let me ask you something too, and I'll ask this to you, Colin, and Locke, of course, we'll get to you. Do you recall your first instance with microtransactions or DLC, sorry, or one of your earliest ones you could think of?
DLC, yeah, I would say, like I said, the Mass Effect series. I would say definitely all the Bethesda mainline kind of like Oblivion, Skyrim games, because these were substantial story. I think it was a Dawn Guard and a couple. I think Heartland was like a relationship one kind of thing. There was one, I have to admit, though, I don't know, I've never had this discussion with Maddie, and I pushed back. Fallout 4 came out, and I remember they announced their DLC was coming without saying what it would be. And they had a price package and a value proposition. I think it was maybe $30-$40. And my only thing was just like, I have no idea thematically what it is. It was just like we're coming out with content. And now it ended up, I think, being Far Harbor later on, and then it was explained later. But in the moment, it was a slight controversial thing. And I remember like, this is kind of interesting. You're not giving me any idea of what it's going to be, but you're expecting this potential value. And I think that's the other, slippery slope with certain things. And again, it depends how much you love it. The last point I'll say, at least with obviously I'm a big Starfield guy, right? So Shattered Space, at least I know, okay, if you played the game, you beat it, you know about House Varun, you know about this other race, and you know if you romance the character Andreja, she has a different religious, philosophical thing than everyone else in the game, and it's a part of the thing that it's unexplained. So I'm dying to tap into. So I guess the point I'm going to get at is, as long as you give me an idea thematically or narratively where you are going to go or what you're going to do, I'm more apt to then get the DLC. If you just automatically say, here's the game and we're coming out with DLC 2, but I don't have any idea, I'm less apt to probably buy it right then. And I'm going to wait until you tell me what's going on with the content.
Yeah. Locke, before we dive into you and everything, let me just hear quickly from you. Earliest instance you can recall interacting with DLC?
Oh, but that's easy. That's the horse armor.
Oh,
that
was
was
it?
that was that was. I loved Oblivion, and it's funny because
Yeah.
Oblivion had like horse armor, but then it also had still to this day the best DLC of all time. I think
Shimmering Isles.
Shivering Owls.
Shivering
yeah.
Isles.
Shivering
I
Isles,
forgot
yeah.
about that. Yes.
Yeah. So it's the duality of Oblivion for me. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Sure, yeah. I'm really curious, Colin, early instances with you with DLC, especially because I know you and Cog were both on the Dreamcast at the time, earlier days of PSO1 and everything like that.
Yeah, I didn't play Phantasy Star Online, so that wasn't a game that I would have messed with. And I did play some games online, but they were just, I played NBA 2K mostly online, and I wasn't buying anything in there. You just would connect with whoever you had, and sometimes you had a keyboard and sometimes you didn't, and otherwise you would just play random games. I was looking this up because I wanted to see. I'm pretty sure the first time I ever interacted with DLC was Rainbow Six 3 on Xbox.
Oh, I remember that.
I played the shit out of that game on Xbox. I loved that
Great
game. My freshman year in college, and I had a T1 connection in college, like after, and it was in our college dorms, and they were just insane. So, and it was wonderful. So I bought the core game, and I remember buying the core game because I like walked through a huge snowstorm to go get it at Best Buy in Boston, and then I walked back and played it and fell in love with it. Had my little nerdy headset on and all the rest. and then I think I bought a couple of maps, but I don't really remember. People have to write in because there were also expansions that you would buy on disc for Rainbow Six 3, like separate versions of the game. And I think one of them was called Black Arrow or something like that, and I had that one. So I don't know if I'm conflating those two things, but I'm pretty sure that that's the first time I ever bought like digital content for a game was. Cool. So that would have been like the fall of 2003, I guess, something like that.
Locke, let's hear from you, man. Favorite DLC, your history with DLC. What do you think about it overall?
Well, I just mentioned Shivering Owls and the horse armor as my first, but that's actually not true. Because now that I think about it, Baldur's Gate 2 back in 2002 had like this huge expansion called Throne of Baal after the main game, which you had to buy separately.
You couldn't download that, could you?
No, that is my physical.
Yeah, I was going to say because expansions like, World of Warcraft expansions back in the day, you still needed the discs.
Yeah.
I'm talking like, straight download.
Okay, so for example, like Warcraft 3, The Frozen Throne, that's not DLC then either, I guess.
That's like a standalone expansion pack, physical thing you buy.
Okay. Well, in that case, I think, was Blood Dragon, was that a physical release?
I don't know. They might have gone, but you could download it.
Yeah, that was
Far Cry
downloadable.
3, yeah.
I know, like, I guess, Locke, I'm just thinking, like, WoW expansions you could download now and buy, but earlier on, I recall you could only buy them physically, like Burning Crusade. So I'm just trying to think of stuff that before you could download it.
Only downloadable.
Yeah.
Download
as well. Download as well. Yeah.
Sure. Well, then I'm thinking Horse Armor was probably for me, like for downloadable content was that, but I was really into PC expansions, which you had to buy.
Of course, yeah.
For example, I don't know, maybe Fable: The Lost Chapters is another example. That was downloadable. That was really, really good to me. GTA 4, The Ballad of Gay Tony and Lost and Condemned.
Classic.
Of course, the obvious one, The Witcher 3, Blood and Wine. Amazing to me. Like Colin already mentioned, BioShock Infinite, Burial at Sea, amazing DLC. So if DLC is implemented that way, that it wraps up a story, I love it. I think that's amazing. I wish every game would do that. That's such a great way to charge people for more money, but actually giving them something meaningful in return.
Yeah, that's good quality content. Yeah.
Yeah, because you basically get like an epilogue to the story, which all of these games we just mentioned did in such a beautiful way. I also think of like Citadel from Mass Effect 3, of course.
Great.
Another great one. And like you said, Cog, the Lair of the Shadow Broker, another fantastic one. I think all those games really have all those games enhance their games with DLC. But then there's also the other side of DLC, and that's the side that kind of annoys me. There's one of my favorite developers. I love them, but they do this all the time, and it annoys me greatly. Is Owlcat on PC? They made Pathfinder: Wrath of the Righteous, and they also made Rogue Trader right now. And Pathfinder: Wrath of the Righteous is an excellent CRPG, one of the best ones ever. I love that game. But they released 2 years of DLC for that game, spread over 2 seasons. So 2 years of DLC. And some of the DLC takes place before the game. Some of the DLC takes place during the game. Some of the
I see.
DLC takes place after the game. Some of the DLC is like in another area, but then you can integrate your save into the game again. So basically, you had to wait 2 years for the game to have all its DLC out to experience the whole thing. And that kind of annoys me because right now they have a new game out called Rogue Trader, which I've been really anxiously waiting to play since it came out in December, I think, or even earlier maybe. But they're releasing DLC next month in August. And the DLC takes place in the middle of the game. So I'm not going to play that game now and then start over in August, or play that game a year ago and then start over in August. It really annoys me when companies do stuff like that. Like either craft like a beautiful epilogue at the end of the game, or give me the game that I paid for, or give me the game that you made with the entire story. Because I don't think they do this. This is like the biggest complaint about DLC, right? Or it used to be anyway, that they take parts out of games and then sell it to you back. I don't think that's happening, not at all. At least not with these developers. Or it could happen, of course, with other developers I just don't know about. But another example is Starfield, like you brought up, Cog. What they're doing right now and also kind of annoys me. Like they're not releasing, you don't have to pay for it, the DLC that they're releasing, but they are releasing constant updates that make the game better, which is awesome, of course. But why wasn't this in the game a year ago? Why did we have to wait 9 months for 60 FPS, which was impossible, but now it's possible? Why is there suddenly a map in the game now? But 6 months ago, no, you don't need a map. Why do you need a map? The next DLC or like Shattered Space is you're gonna have to pay for it, which is cool because it looks awesome. I can't wait to play that. But where are the vehicles? Are the vehicles going to be in that DLC? So basically, if you buy the DLC, the main game gets better, but the main game was already great according to you as a developer. So why are you doing it this way? That annoys me greatly because that's the reason I stopped playing Starfield. I'd never finished Starfield. I put 60 hours into it. I liked it. And then I figured, well, this game is not complete. I'm going to play the finished game in 2 or 3 years, which is exactly what is happening. Which is a problem, I think. That's not how games used to be, and that's not how games should be. When you buy something, it needs to be a finished product. And of course, updates are great, and updates are good, but not updates that are this substantial, that make the game that it should have been from the start, with 60 FPS or with maps or with better controls or a sneaking option that works or vehicles. Those are options that actually make the game better, but also make the game entirely different and make the game what it should have been. The same can be said, but they fixed it with an actual expansion, was Cyberpunk. Also very annoying what happened there. You bought the game, but it's not really the game you have these days.
Right.
Cyberpunk is a rare exception because I played through it twice. I played through it at launch. I thought, oh, this is okay, a good RPG, I guess. And then I played through it again last year. I thought it was amazing. And then Phantom Liberty, which also takes place near the end of the game, which is annoying, but it was an amazing expansion, amazing DLC, amazing story. And it took place at like a separate part of the map, so I don't have a huge problem with that as long as it doesn't interfere with the main story. So in my experience, DLC can be awesome, can be amazing, can enhance games, especially the ending of games. But if DLC is handled the way Starfield does it, or is handled the way Owlcat sadly does it, one of my favorite developers, I don't think it enhances anything. It just annoys me that I have to wait 2 years after launch to play the actual game.
I just want to jump in because you make a good point. I think I agree with your point in reference to the integration of DLC in a game as far as your relationship to where the game story is. And some games have this weird thing of like, okay, you have to be at this certain part of the game to at least even start to engage with it, right? And I think that's a valid point. I guess the other part is you're making a good point in reference to the Cyberpunk Starfield thing, because I see your point in reference to, okay, you know what? Yeah, 60 frames this would have been a completely transformative experience if this was ready at launch, right? And all the different options, and especially the map. I'll give you that. The map should have been there because it was really terrible to navigate. Especially my issue is actually with the Constellation, his star charting part of it. I think that's horrible. I don't like the way it's not intuitive, right? Yeah. I guess where I differ is that with Cyberpunk, I remember on console, that game was literally not functional. It was broken. Like I couldn't do things as opposed to what I consider quality of life versus DLC kind of thing. But I get your point. There's a part of me that I said it to Maddie. I'm like, man, like a year, man, if they would have waited a year,
Yeah.
this could have been really a different conversation with critical acclaim. And I'm worried now about the pressure, of release dates, and stockholders say, hey, this got to come out. Todd, we gave you a year or whatever, and Xbox needs this now, right? I worry about those conversations in the boardroom getting involved with the actual quality of the game. And to Colin's point, we know like these games are expensive to make, right? So you've got that aspect going. But that's a very valid point, Locke. I think you really nailed something there, and it's something that the industry I've been very cognizant of, that a lot of these games are getting out a little too early, and they still needed more time to cook, so to speak.
Yeah. Oh, you gonna say something?
Well, just that would start with concerning Starfield. They said like 60 FPS wasn't possible.
Remember that?
It is possible.
Creative choice.
Yeah, I remember the creative.
Yeah, exactly. But so they were lying, which is fine, I guess. But that doesn't give me confidence that they won't do it again.
Sure. One weird thing, I guess, just my final point is now with DLC and the era we live in games is we live in an era where games last a long time and go on for a long time. We think back in the NES day, you get a full trilogy, like one per year, something like that. Even PS3, we got all 3 Uncharted games, something like that. But now we're in year 20 of World of Warcraft here, Locke. They just fucking won't let it die and make something new. That just keeps going. It's great. DLC is great. We get many benefits, many more than negatives. It's just like, fuck, man. Could you guys just make something new, for God's sakes? Stop adding on.
We're in the era of this. I call it the Sinister Six, brother. Where it's those 5 to 6 games that, if you look at engagement, you look at sales, these are the games people are living in, and they are just continuing to pump content in these games. And I think another reason why it's stalling what I consider, next generation only style content, because people are willing to still play these things on PS4 and Xbox One.
They're
and
perfectly content.
Older people, that it is, because to move away from that group and that revenue, right? It's gonna take the GTA 6s, right? Those games where it's like, okay, this is the cutoff, this is the new one. You can only play it here, and then to get them there. But I think we're in this weird era where it's these older games still dominating the headlines. So no, it's a good point. I mean, I'm definitely guilty. I played Destiny for them.
And like we shouldn't feel guilty about doing it. It's totally fine. It's like they're giving us awesome games and we're enjoying them and we're having a good time. There's nothing wrong with that. But I do just kind of lament not getting some new things, maybe possibly.
From
who knows if we even would? I don't know.
Right.
But it's just like the thought I think about that kind of stuff.
And lastly, I would be remiss if I did not. I'm Lord Turbe, and I did not say this. I have to give a shout out to XCOM 2: War of the Chosen. That's one of my favorite DLCs of all time. I'm very honored to interview Jake Solomon. In my opinion, XCOM 2 that's the GOAT of turn-based games in my case. And that DLC was so challenging. It was transformative. It changed the game on its head. And he blew the game away. To me, the teachers, surpassed the master. With Julian Gollop which the original XCOM games, which I love. My first one was a PlayStation 1. I played it on PlayStation UFO Defense. That was my first time playing a tournament. I was like, what is this? I'm blown away by this game. With the old Micropose, I believe was the company at the time. Yeah. And he's a legend. That game transformed me. But Jake Solomon, that game, the XCOM, when they came to consoles eventually, Enemy Within and all that stuff, but War of the Chosen, I have to give him a shout out. That was one of my little bucket list interviews. I geeked out that whole interview. I had to ask so many questions to that man, because that's one of my greatest turn-based games of all time.
That's awesome. I think I'm satisfied, guys. Excellent. I learned a lot about your DLC taste. It's cool to hear your experience with that. So thank you for indulging me.
Cool. Yeah, those were fun topics.
Great one.
Appreciate you guys joining me today. I think Dagan will be back next week. I see him. He's coming here later tonight, but I'll see him tomorrow to do our party for our mom. But I'll have to ask him. I think he'll be back in the fold next week. So I don't know if I'll be on next week, but it was cool to do a few of these in a row and to finish here with you guys. Very nerdy topics, which was great. Right up my alley. Let's go around and say goodbye to everyone. Lockmore, let's go to you first. Goodbye to you. Sure. Be well.
Goodbye. Thank you, sir. Well, I'm sorry that I derailed it a bit with this boring European politics.
Oh,
But
okay.
I thought it was. I thought it was. I thought it
Constellation
was.
politics did jump off.
I thought it was pretty
good.
interesting to have a conversation about that. So thank you for having me on. I had a great time. It was awesome.
Oh, great. Yeah, I don't mind that at all. I try to stay away from the more serious topics because I feel like they annoy a lot of people. And so I just don't want to have that vibe with the show. I mean, it would be so easy for me to come up with topics each week if I could talk about like newsworthy things, but I just don't want to get involved usually. But no, it's totally fine. I have no problem. And that would be a really fruitful topic, I think, in the future for us to explore. Brad, goodbye to you. Be well. Have a good weekend.
Thank you. I'm going to be playing more Elden Ring, so I will be well. I'm in my happy place right now.
Cool, man. Have fun. And finally, Cog, stay cool. Have a good weekend. What are you up to?
Yeah, so back to the final shape. I'll go back to being a Destiny crackhead again and live in that world that I can't, that Brad hates. I'm just joking. Brad doesn't hate it.
I don't hate Destiny at all.
Yeah. No. Oh, really? I didn't know that.
No, I think Destiny's a really good game. It's just I can't have that many types of games like that in my life.
No, I get because you know
my
what
live
it
service
does.
game. I'll play
Yes.
Final Fantasy 14 and maybe a little WoW on the side, and that I'm good for that. But I think Destiny is a very good game.
No, I
Definitely.
appreciate it, and hopefully there may be a Secret Symbols Plus coming up with a certain someone, and get to say I get to satiate that aspect to talk to someone about that. So stay tuned for that.
Cool. Yeah, I'm excited about that too. Well, have fun. And thank you all again for being here. And thank you all out there for your love, kindness, and support of Last Stand Media and Constellation and all of our shows. Early ad-free access over on patreon.com/laststandmedia, merch at laststandmedia.store. We'll see you next time. Until then, goodbye. Constellation is a product of Last Stand Media and Collins Last Stand LLC and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show was conceived by and is directed and hosted by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-host is my brother, Dagan Moriarty. The show is produced by Last Stand's executive producer, Dustin Furman, and is edited by associate producer, Ben Smith. All Last Stand theme music is by Ramon Narvaez, and all of our graphics and logos are by Dagan Moriarty. As you know, all of Last Stand Media's podcasts, including Constellation, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest support tier, and we're infinitely grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor.